From the Israel Sports Radio studios in Jerusalem, Israel, our nation's capital, it's Lewis Live. There's your host, me, Rory Lewis. Good evening, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well. Wednesday night here from Jerusalem, Israel, the capital city in the Holy Land. It's Lewis Live coming at you at IsraelSportsRadio.com, courtesy of being on live through Justin TV. You can find us at justin.tv/Israel Sports Radio, DOTCOM. We have a great show. We have a couple surprises in store for you. We're going to have on Bill Foran in about an hour and a half. He's assistant coach with the Miami Heat, is the strength and conditioning coach. So part of LeBron James' success this year, his fourth MVP in 5 years, taking his game to a new level, is courtesy of Bill. So we'll ask, what has LeBron been doing? What's he been eating, drinking? Let's get a secret out there so you guys who play pickup basketball can take your games up to another level as well. In about a half an hour, we'll have on Rory. He used to be a UFC mixed martial artist, and he has a gym. He's training a couple of fighters that are having some success. We'll talk to him about those fighters as well as the mixed martial arts game in general. We're going to have on Rory Bluestein. Haven't had Ari on in a while. We're going to break down of both the East Finals and the West Finals in the NBA and the association. West Finals is 2-0 for the Spurs over the Memphis Grizzlies, and the East Finals begins tonight. So the West gets 2 games in before we get to the East Final. That's kind of a problem with playoff scheduling. I know there is only so much David Stern can do, but with an older team like the Spurs, if the Spurs get even a sweep or a 5-game victory, and the Heat have to go to 6 or 7 games with the Indiana Pacers, I believe that's a big advantage for the Spurs. I know people like to play in rhythm, teams like to play in rhythm, but the Spurs are aging, and that extra rest could be a factor in the NBA Finals. Of course, we're far away from that. Memphis will have something to say about that, as they're going to have to try to pull off 4 wins in 5 games. Now, Oklahoma City, under young upstart team last year, was able to pull it off. We'll see if Memphis could get around and do the same thing. But we're going to switch gears right now and not talk about the NBA. We're going to go to baseball. We have a very special guest on. He is the CEO and founder of Jaegar Sports, and that is Alan Jaegar, who's worked with several Major League Baseball teams. Let's bring Alan on the line. Alan, welcome to Lewis Live on Israel Sports Radio.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So we've heard a lot about you. We've wanted you to come on the show for a while, and I find what you do very, very interesting. So before you tell us about some of the teams you work with, tell us what is the goal of Jaegar Sports, and more importantly, how did you come up with this idea to start this company?
Well, basically, I played baseball up through college at Cal State Northridge, and my first, passion was more of the mental part of the game. It's something that I studied and got into at a very early age, and that includes meditation and stuff like that. I ended my career as a pitcher, and I was a pitching coach, if you will, regardless. But I just fell in love with the mental game. So I wrote a book in the early '90s about really kind of more of a Far Eastern approach, my influence was really more Zen and yoga and stuff like that. And so, so I got started really more in the mental game, and then I still did the pitching coach stuff on the side, if you will. And then eventually I just merged them both. And I guess to answer your question, our goal was really to try to bring a holistic approach to athletes, because we just feel like the most neglected part of the game is the mental game, and really in baseball, the other most neglected part of the game is throwing. And so we really specialize in arm care, arm strength, arm conditioning. That's why we tend to attract more pitchers than anybody else. But again, we're just trying to merge the mind and the body, and that's the third piece is yoga. Yoga is obviously kind of a bridge between the mental game and the physical game. So we love the fact that we're really dealing with 3 of the most important and yet the most neglected parts of the game: the mind, the body, and the arm.
All right, so very fascinating stuff, and it's interesting that sometimes in the past with the major sports, this type of philosophy, Eastern philosophy, Zen philosophy, was somewhat laughed at. When Phil Jackson had his team do layup drills without a basketball, people thought that was kind of funny, but Phil had the last laugh with 11 rings. So with that being said, do you think this will become more mainstream thought and more teams will adopt this type of style?
I do. You know, again, it's like you said, Zen was really popularized in major sports by Phil, but I just think if you look at, I kind of look at yoga as symbolism. If you look at yoga and you look at how many yoga studios there are now in the country versus, the world for that matter, versus even just 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, symbolically, it's clear that it's become mainstream. It's become part of the culture. Whether people actually use terminology like Zen or Buddhism or Taoism or yoga, it's what matters more is that it's the philosophy, and the philosophy has more to do with breathing and more of mind, body, spirit. It's not so much just purely Western thought and Western psychology. Not that there's not a place for that too. But, so I guess to answer your question is, I feel like it's become more mainstream because yoga's become more mainstream. I think at the end of the day, people are just really interested in common sense. If things make sense and things work, let's face it, if things work, then I think people are starting to get, more into whatever works. And whether it's, like, you call it Zen, or you call it breathing, or you call it meditation, or you call it focus, or you call it concentration, at the end of the day, I think that the general managers, at least in baseball, the ones that are going to really be the smartest going forward are the ones that start attacking the mental game, because God knows for centuries or however long 100 plus years, that the physical game has been on the forefront. And I've been really trying to push I've talked to a few people in different organizations in the front office, and I've basically told them that, look, the team that's going to make the greatest jump in the next year or 2 or 5 is the team that brings in someone who doesn't just talk about sports psychology and talk about the quote-unquote mental game, but is really there every day in spring training to take the players through some kind of breathing exercise, some form of practice, so that they have that every day when they break spring training after 4 or 5 weeks.
All right, so it's a great point, because a lot of times with these sports psychologists, maybe you get someone who goes in a shrink's office, he does what he has to do, he breaks out of a slump, but he will go back to his previous patterns. So basically Tony Robbins talks about a concept that you want to use your body to enact and retain the mental practice that you've gone through. Is that something that you enforce and use with other teams in Major League Baseball?
Yeah, really, our connection with Major League Baseball, quite honestly, has been more with our throwing program. We've done a lot of work with a lot of professional players as far as mental game work. But I feel like the disconnect right now in professional baseball is just really that I think they're making an effort to bring in sports psychologists and to have mental guys there, or women now. I think the Rangers just hired actually a female. So I think they're doing an admirable job, but I think the great disconnect, and this is what I feel very strongly about, is that it's one thing to bring a sports psych guy in to, like you said, deal with somebody and help them with a slump, or go to the Double-A team for 3 days and work with the players. But my whole premise is that you've got to get dirty and get in there deep and get to spring training when you have 6 weeks, and not just talk about the mental game like, here's what it means to be pitch to pitch, and here's what it means to focus on the now. And those are all great ideas, but you said something very, very profound, which is, if you fix the problem in the short run and they're going to default back to old patterns, to me they need something more sustainable. And I feel like that 6-week window in spring training is just powerful, because people have no idea that just the art of breathing, even if they don't even know why they're doing it yet, can really change programs at a deep, deep level, and just change the way the brain functions and change the way the body reacts. So I feel like that's I've talked to two teams that have they're in the front office, and these are people I have a good relationship with, and one guy I've just met, but we've started talking a lot about this, and I can tell they're starting to get intrigued because they keep planting the seed. The first organization, none of the 30 teams do this. None of them. I know this just from being in this game so long. They don't have someone there to do a daily meditation or daily breath work. And that, to me, is the greatest disconnect in Major League Baseball.
We're speaking with Alan Jaegar of Jaegar Sports. Breathing, very fascinating topic because one of the things I recall, Floyd Mayweather Jr. fight 2007 against Ricky Hatton, the announcers noticed how fresh Floyd was in the 10th round while Ricky Hatton was spent. And one of the commentators for the BBC, of course Ricky Hatton from England, said that perhaps Floyd is breathing the way yoga people do. They noticed something in his breathing. And a lot of those martial arts movies we'll talk about where the instructor, the coach will say, you got to focus more on your breathing. You're thinking too angry. You got to breathe, and well, for whatever reason, that will help you. So this is a very, very important with breathing. If they do this, is this the difference between, let's say, winning a division and not making the playoffs? I mean, how much of an impact positive can this help for players if they breathe correctly?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not going to mention any names, but if you took $250 million that you give one player, and granted, that player might be worth it. My goodness, if you took $100,000 or a couple $100,000 and invested that into someone coming in for weeks, during spring training, the value, I can't even put it. To me, it's almost like how many games? If you won, what happened last year? Wasn't there one or two teams last year that missed the playoffs by one game or two games? So,
sure.
Let's just be very conservative. Let's just say that you'd win 5 more games just by employing more mental practice and more, breath work and things that are out in a practical way. I mean, to me, I think it's conservative to say win 5 more games, and I just think everything gets better. I think performance gets better. I think the clubhouse gets better. I think that I don't know. It's more of an energy thing. I think the more that people do it, the more it becomes part of who you are, and I think the more that it just supports a healthy climate. And look, one of the things I've written in the book, I mean, and I've written pretty much every article ever on the mental game, is if you study the breath, there's like 40 unbelievable benefits from just the physiology of the breath and how the body works, the physiology of the brain. There's been tons of studies. They've done studies at Harvard and Stanford. So this is nothing new. The problem is that people haven't picked up on it in the States very well, at least in baseball. And if you go around probably to countries outside of the United States, which this is kind of the sad part to me, this is not rocket science to them. This is not. There's nothing brand new about it. This is stuff that I think if you go back even to the 70s with the Russians, I think and the East Germans, I think a big thing that they did was they implemented meditation and Far Eastern ideas. And I don't think it was a coincidence that they were dominant in the Olympics for many years. Now, maybe people said that it was enhancement of drugs and stuff like that. I don't know. All I know is that from a little research I did on that area, that they were implementing techniques from the Far East, and I do feel like other sports are even ahead of us as far as baseball. That they're way more receptive to mental practice, if you will, and it's coming. It might take another 10 or 20 years, but it's coming, and I hope it's not that long.
Yeah, the interesting thing about breathing, and of course this is Israel Sports Radio, so I'll bring this up, that there's a concept in Hebrew that neshama, soul, means, a literal translation is God's breath, that God put his breath, put breath into man. So it's very interesting how there's a soul, spiritual component to breathing and why it can really help a team be a lot more successful. Now, this is a little bit more of general psychology, but I want to get your perspective and curious to what you think of how a guy, let's take Peyton Manning, for example. And, Peyton, if you're listening, I'm not making fun of you. We're going through a statistical analysis that a guy wins 4 MVPs in the regular season. In the postseason, he's below 500. Those are the stats. So, and you see time and time again, baseball players, no different. Alex Rodriguez is kind of in that category where he's got all the tools. And then in the postseason, he's nervous. What happens exactly that a guy plays so well, and then the spotlight comes on, and he shuts down, doesn't get the big hit, strikes out, whatever happens?
That's a great question. Well, I liken it to the word familiarity and foreign territory. And what I mean by that is that during the season, it's a long season. You get very familiar with the routine. You get very familiar with your day-to-day stuff. There's not a lot to think about. And when the postseason comes around, the batting average is 0 and the ERA is 0 for everybody. Now there's a lot not for everybody, but now there's more to think about. There's more variables, right? So to me, what happens is it's a simple mind matter. The mind changes. It goes from being very familiar, very comfortable, very routine-ish, to now all of a sudden there's more at stake, there's more consequences, there's more eyes on you, there might be more of a past history with you in postseason, and so all these things get magnified. And one of the reasons, and I keep going back to this, that this idea of 6 weeks in spring training of doing breath work and doing more mental practice so guys can do it during the season, is that your breath can be a routine every single day, just like your other physical routines, but your breath has so much depth to it, it has a chance to really change patterns so that when the postseason comes around, even if your mind starts thinking about, there's more consequences and there's pressure, you can go back to your breath. You can go back to a routine you've been doing every day, and that has a chance to really keep you more consistent. I call it a default system. You want your body to default back to its breathing, not default back to its thinking, because the thinking is what's going to create the stress and the pressure and the worry and the overthinking. So this is another. So your question is great because it applies to all sports and really life. I mean, look, if you had to go in tomorrow and you had an interview for a job that was going to give you the best job you've ever wanted, it was going to pay you 50 times more than you make now. You might say, wow, man, this is an important interview. And you might start, the night before you may not sleep as well, and you may, stress out about it. You may overthink it. Maybe your performance in the interview isn't as good or isn't good at all just because there's a lot of pressure on it. And so the idea, if you had been meditating for a month straight and really getting into your breathing and really taught your body to relax and really taught your mind how to be quiet and not buy into all your stories and all your worries about the consequences, then the morning of your interview, I'm not saying you're not going to maybe think about it a little bit, but you go back to this strong foundation you've created with your breath work, and you do some deep breathing, which gets into your body, and remember now, you've been doing this for a month, so it's very routine to you. There's a very powerful effect that can happen to your body and your mind to where you go in the meeting and you keep things very similar. In other words, you don't change so much, you don't look at it so much differently because your breath is such a strong foundation. And that, to me, is why this is the greatest disconnect in professional baseball and probably all sports, is because people are doing the sports psychology thing. They're getting good advice. You might even be getting some good mental techniques at times. But no one that I know of has done a sustainable breathing, some kind of a practical work in a daily fashion to help establish these patterns that can be very strong through the changing of the seasons where, again, yes, things can start to get very magnified. And as you mentioned, players can really change from the regular season to the postseason.
And I like this concept talking about people overthink, not just in sports and in life, and it causes them issues that they don't need to have. And that's kind of what the Zen philosophy is a lot of times, to not think, empty your mind, correct?
Correct, yeah. I mean, one of the things that drew me to Zen, ironically, is that when I was in college, one of the things that led to some struggles for me was an overthinking issue. And I've really, and I understand in psychology and psychiatry that some people are going to have chemical imbalances. Some people are going to have, real physiological issues. But I joke with people that I think it's pretty valid that, 90% of, neuroses, 90% of problems, if you will, in life, just your most basic stress, run-of-the-mill anxiety, to me are thought originated, meaning
right.
They start with your thought process. So that's the thing that attracted me about Zen, because if you think about it, if you study peak performance, right, peak performance is about being in a zone and being in a place that is thoughtless. So you're in a place where your instincts are taking over, which is, I think every athlete can relate to that. They want their instincts rolling. They want to be in a flow. That if they look back at their best game and they're honest, they'd say, man, I wasn't thinking about a thing, man. I was just flowing in the game, like a wave in the ocean. If you're surfing or body surfing, the wave takes over and the wave's in charge. And it's actually a very powerful feeling as an athlete. So, yes, the idea of no mind and no thought with Zen was so attractive. And I think and now you see why it's so important in baseball and golf especially. There's all this dead time between pitches and between shots in golf. so the mind has a chance to think, right, and get into, well, technically think, which could then lead to overthinking. But regardless, it's hard to stay more in that instinctive, non-thought flow because there's so much dead time in those two sports.
You know, it's so funny you were talking about this because I was playing in a shul league, a synagogue league game on Monday. At halftime, I did not play so well. My coach made a comment I wasn't playing so well, and he's like, I'll give you another chance in the second half. So instead of kind of relaxing, I was thinking, don't mess up, don't mess up. And, of course, whenever you think about expands, and I had 3 turnovers right away. So it didn't really help me. So it is very interesting, the whole thought patterns, that the thoughts really create more issues. If you're just joining us, folks, we're speaking with Alan Jaeger of Jaeger Sports. We have a few minutes left with you, Alan. Let's talk about briefly, and we'll have to obviously have you on again because it's such a great topic, but you worked with some teams in Major League Baseball, Texas Rangers, Cleveland Indians, LA Angels, Houston Astros. Tell us about some of those experiences, some of the players you worked with. Again, you talked about arm motion, working with their arms and throwing. Tell us some of those experiences with working with those baseball teams.
Well, it's been great because our background is in what's called long toss. You know, we're huge into distance throwing. We're of the mindset, we're like the Michael Phelps of throwing. We believe in a lot of conditioning and a lot of training, and we believe in throwing more rather than less. And I don't really mean like on a mound, and I don't mean throwing 200 pitches in a game, but we just believe in you know, if an arm can throw it, you know, 120 yards or 360 feet, we're going to push to it. If it can throw it 370 feet, you know, we're going to push to it. If it's a little kid and he's throwing 90 feet, we're going to try to push him to 100 feet, you know, at the right time. So we're big into distance throwing. We're big into conditioning. And unfortunately, and I wrote an article, it's on our website, that talks a lot about why have they babied the arms? Why have they been implementing what's called this 120-foot throwing program? That to me is just for the listeners, if you took a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, which is like the average fastball at the professional level, and you angled it 30 degrees, it'll go about 300 feet. So the whole idea here is that why would you take these great athletes with great arms, especially if they've been training at 300-plus feet their whole life, why would you put them on a 120-foot throwing program? And unfortunately, the majority of clubs did this from the 90s because in the 90s, once they started really doing a lot of Tommy John and shoulder reconstructions, well, ironically, and not so ironically, the rehab program capped out at about 120 feet. And so that became very comfortable and very safe, and also it was medically backed. So what we're trying to do is bring long toss and distance throwing back to baseball because it's such a healthier way. It has so many benefits from just health and strength and endurance and recovery for the pitchers. So you know, we've been banging this drum for a long time, and fortunately in 2008 we met with the Rangers front office people, and they were all in, and they actually flew me down to the Dominican for 6 days, and so we started really with the lower level down there, and they just had so much success down there that it's just become a philosophy now in the entire organization, and ironically or not so ironically, it's just cool, but since '08, and part of this is they just have great front office people, great coaches, and they've been drafting well, but they've been developing so well. Their arms are a strength in the organization, which has never been the case for 20, 30, 40 years with, you know, the Rangers, if you go back at least the last 20 years. And so it's been exciting, I guess, to go back to your question. What's been exciting is that these teams now are embracing our philosophy, and they're going away from this whole 120 restricted philosophy, which to me is you talk about the greatest disconnect is the mental part that we just talked about. To me, the greatest disconnect in professional baseball is a lack of distance throwing. You know, it's getting a lot better. We feel like we've influenced at least 6, 7, maybe organizations in the last 5 years, but there's more organizations I feel like that are getting it on the long toss wagon. So it's just been exciting because, you know, look, you're talking about helping to transform a whole organization, you know, taking an organization that was doing a philosophy one way that from our point of view was really counter to what the arm wants to do, and feeling like an entire organization is going toward your philosophy. It's just neat, you know, and at the end of the day, it's for the kids. It's better for the kids to stay healthy and have a chance to realize their dreams.
All right, last question before we let you go. Let's give you a plug. People can check out you through Facebook. You have Jaeger Sports as a Facebook group. What are some other ways people could find out more about you and what you do?
Yeah, cool. First of all, our Facebook is Jaeger Sports, Jaeger Sports, and then our Twitter account is @Jaeger Sports. And pretty much every day between myself and my assistant, we usually put out about 7 or 8 mental game tweets and do a little bit about throwing. And then lastly, the website, which is where we have tons of articles, and we have a DVD in our throwing program. We have a book on the mental game, and then we have like a surgical tubing apparatus for arm care, and that's JaegerSports.com, JAEGER, and the word sports.com.
All right. Great stuff, Alan. This is really a pleasure. I'm so happy we were able to get you on the program. Great stuff. We'll be in touch with you. We'll have to have you on more in the future. And thank you so much for being on Lewis Live on IsraelSportsRadio.com. All right, that was Alan Jaeger of Jaeger Sports, founder and CEO. You talked about the mental aspect of the game several times on this program. He talked about how breathing is a big part of the mental game, and how players, if you're paying a player $25 million plus a year, perhaps you should invest $100,000 into breathing, make it habitual, so when he gets into the postseason, he doesn't choke. Alex Rodriguez. I don't know how I said that. I don't know why I said that. All right, we're going to take a commercial break. We have a very special guest on the other side. This gentleman came on the program with myself and Andy about 3 years ago, when we were at another network. So that's before Israel Sports Radio was even created. And this gentleman, very talented athlete. He's now moved more into coaching, if you will, has his own gym, and he has fighters that are being very successful. And I'm speaking, of course, about Rory Singer, who is a former UFC mixed martial arts fighter. So enjoy that on the other side of this commercial break. This is Lewis Live on IsraelSportsRadio.com. And we'll be right back right after this.
You're tuned in to the only all-sports talk network in the Middle East, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Hey folks, Kagan here. As you know, I'm always staying on top of the fitness world, keeping up with current trends. One form of exercise that's been around for ages and is currently being rediscovered is suspension bodyweight training. So if you're looking for a way to get in shape, improve your health, and train your body to move in new ways, then the X1 by Israel Gym Systems is for you. Find out more on our website at www.israelgym.com or look for our page on Facebook, Israel Gym Systems X1. Israel Gym X1. Higia Hazman.
You're already using a credit card every day. Why not feel good every time you make a purchase? When using the HAS Advantage Support Israel Visa card, a percentage of each purchase you make will be donated to your choice of 24 Israeli-based charities, while still earning a reward point for every dollar spent. But wait, these rewards are even better than the standard rewards you get, especially when using them towards Israel travel, with the best conversion rate on El Al's Matmeed frequent flyer program. Earn double points at some of your favorite supermarkets and restaurants in the U.S., as well as discounts all over Israel. If you love traveling and supporting Israel, HAS Advantage is the card for you. Just give us a call toll-free at 1-866-6-ISRAEL. Sign up right now with the code ISR10 to earn 2,500 bonus points. That's 1-866-647-7235. HAS Advantage. Earn rewards. Support Israel. Offer valid for U.S. citizens only. Terms and conditions do apply. When dialing from within Israel, please dial 1-800-200-818.
Israel Sports Dynamics specializes in football consulting, equipment, uniforms, and more. Great brands such as Nike, Russell Athletics, Schutt Sports Products, and many more. Just one call away. With over 30 years coaching experience with university and professional athletes, Harry Hill, owner of ISD, can advise you for all your sports needs. Call 054-581-3248. That's 054-581-3248, or visit our website at www.isdisrael.com. If that's not easy enough, click on the ISD banner on the Israel Sports Radio website and be part of the game.
Are you tired of paying for expensive gym memberships that you don't use? Are you frustrated by not seeing results? It's time for the X1. Israel Gym Systems is proud to launch the X1 suspension and bodyweight training system. Lose weight, build muscle, improve balance, coordination, and flexibility. With your purchase of the X1, you'll receive a free membership to IsraelGym.com and access to our archives of videos and exercise plans. Sign up today at www.israelgym.com and get ready for the new you. Israel Gym X1. Higia Hazman.
Broadcasting live from Israel.
IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Back here on Lewis Live on Israel Sports Radio. Thank you for tuning in to us. Wednesday edition of the program. We have a great show the rest of the way. We will have on Bill Foran, who is a assistant coach of the Miami Heat. He is a strength and conditioning coach for the ball club. Very special guest at 10 p.m. We will have on Danielle Goldstein, who is going to try to compete for the Olympics and represent Israel through Grand Prix racing. We're going to talk about that. That'll be very exciting stuff. That's about 90 minutes away from now. And in about a half hour from now, we'll have on Rory Bluestein. We have not had Ari on for a while. He's our Philadelphia correspondent, and we will talk about the West Finals and the East Finals. East Finals, Miami Heat versus the Indiana Pacers gets underway tonight. West Finals, the Spurs have a 2-0 lead over the Memphis Grizzlies. Very intriguing series. Memphis is very young. They will have something to say about it the rest of the way. They will have to win 4 out of 5 games, which is a very daunting task. But right now we're going to switch gears and discuss the world of mixed martial arts with our good friend. We have not had him on the program in a long time. Great to have him back on. That is Rory Senior. Rory, welcome back to Lewis Live on Israel Sports Radio.
Hey, guys. How y'all doing?
Doing wonderful. And before we get into some of the things you've been doing with your gym and some of the fighters that you have, I want to get your take on the big fight between Chael Sonnen and Jones, and, of course, different, I wouldn't say controversial, but had Jones not got the ground and pound, it's questionable if he would have been able to come out in the second round because he had that broken toe. The commission might have not allowed him to do that. So how clutch of it, in your eyes, was his performance, able to get that victory? And if he not gone that point, the knockout right there, he most likely would have lost.
I mean, let's be honest. Had he lost that fight, he really wouldn't have lost that fight. I mean, sure, he would have lost the title for a brief period of time. He would have came back the next time and beat Sonnen just as handily as he did the first time. It would have been unfortunate because it was really nothing that Chael did, and I like Chael, but it was nothing that Chael even did to cause the injury. I mean, you see the replay, and he just turned his foot the wrong way, and boom, his toe went. So it would have been unfortunate. He would have lost it. I don't think anyone would have given Chael any credit for actually being the light heavyweight champ, although we know Chael would never have stopped talking about it because he is awesome at that.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt about it. He is great at playing the villain. He's very entertaining, and he would have never shut up about it. We have heard that forever. Now, John Jones, before we get into his next fight, there's been an article written a few weeks ago comparing him to Ali, Tyson, those type of things. I know it's apples and oranges, but how do you compare him towards those great legendary boxers like a Muhammad Ali and a Mike Tyson and so on?
I don't. I'm not, if my brother was here right now and you were talking about boxing, he is a mega fan of boxing, and he would probably tell you that that's just preposterous. John Jones has been doing mixed martial arts for a few years, and you're talking about boxers who were boxing for years and years, who had illustrious careers, who moved up weight classes and, just did things in the sport that Jones has not done. I don't believe, maybe another 5-10 years he can be talked that way, but it's not a fair comparison. And at the same time, Jones is not fighting the caliber of opponent,
right,
or opponents that those guys did. He's fighting good quality MMA fighters, but those high quality MMA fighters are not at the level of those boxers.
Great point.
Who had hundreds of amateur fights, who had 30, 40, and 50 pro fights to go undefeated throughout careers, to have an opportunity to fight at that level, to fight for those world titles. That's just not what MMA is right now. And but it's getting there, and it'll be awesome to see it when it does. But it's not the same. You can't compare that type of boxer at that level with an MMA fighter at that same level, because to be honest, how many fights does John Jones even have before he made it into UFC? How many amateur fights? What kind of journey did he go through? Wasn't the same kind of journey that a Mike Tyson went through, or Muhammad Ali, or a Roy Jones Jr., or Floyd Mayweather, or Manny Pacquiao, or any of those guys. It's just not the same. Boxing is different in that respect.
Yeah, also great points all the way around. Jones also very young. He's 25 years old, so he hasn't perhaps accomplished enough. He only has 18 wins up to this point, only one loss. That was by disqualification, so kind of controversial. But, yeah, he's going to have to prove himself a little bit more. It was an interesting article in Yahoo, and that's why I wanted to get your take on it. Now, the big fight coming up, most likely, Anderson Silva versus John Jones. Anderson Silva could be the best UFC fighter we've ever seen. It seems like never – it looks like he's going to lose. He figures a way out of it. Break us down that fight. If it ends up happening, what do you see occurring? What will be some of the variables that will be the key for that fight?
To be honest, I believe Jones wins that fight.
Wow. Okay.
We saw Anderson has an issue in the wrestling. I mean, Jones was able to take down Chael. And Chael, if we do the whole A beats B, B beats C type thing, Jones was able to take down Chael. Chael handily took down Silva, especially that first time, and for 4 rounds was on top of him, winning. And then in great Chael form, just loves to get submitted. I think it excites him. Watched it happen when Forrest fought him years and years ago. He gives up those submissions. Sometimes you wonder what he's thinking about. I don't necessarily see Anderson catching Jones in a submission. Jones is long, Silva's long. I can see Jones getting in a clinch and maybe not having the better Muay Thai style clinch, but being able to lock him up and put him on his back, which we've seen Silva has, an issue there. If there's a weakness in his game, it's there. And I can see him putting him on the ground and doing some ground and pound on him. So, and pushing the hard 5 minutes. He's the younger guy. He's as athletic, if not more athletic than Silva. If Silva can keep him at length and put hands on him, Silva wins. But I believe the minute Jones is able to get inside and wrap him up, I think he puts him on the ground and he beats him up on the ground.
All right, Anderson Silva at this point, 38 years old. He just turned 38 in April. If he loses this fight, will that be the end of his career, in your opinion, or does he have a few more years left to go in the world of mixed martial arts?
He definitely has a few more years left to go. If you look back at his career, he, at least in my recent memory of him, especially in the UFC, let's say, because I can't really think back past yesterday, but in thinking of his career in the UFC, he hasn't taken a lot of beatings.
Right. Good point.
He hardly gets hit. So his body and his mind are still at a peak condition. You look at you look at Randy. Randy, it wasn't till the end where he had some of those bad knockouts and stuff that then his age started to catch up with him. But before that, he, again, was a guy who could grind on you when he had grinding out fights, but they weren't always like these brutal, he took a pounding type fights. Where on the other hand, you look at a guy who would be a good example. Forrest is a good example, who's been in some wars. You look at, I'm just trying to think, I don't want to sit here and mumble, but you look at some guys who've taken some big, heavy shots and have been knocked out, and then it's just that much easier to knock them out. Anderson hasn't really been that guy. So I think even if he loses to Jones, I don't see why he still can't beat a bunch of other dudes. And then at some point, hopefully he walks away while he's still on top, because he's still going to be the 85-pound champion. Even if he loses to Jones at a catch weight or whatever, he's still the 85-pound champion. He's still a guy who went undefeated for as long as he's gone undefeated and defended for as long as he's defended. And I just like to see him go out on top. If he's beating everybody there is to beat, he beats Weidman, because I really want to see that fight happen. I want to see that fight happen more than Jones.
Really?
Because
Okay.
Weidman, in my opinion, is the next guy that he has to prove he can beat at 185.
All right, now would
if
you
he
be?
Weidman, then there's no one left.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing also, the quality opponents out there for Silva after this fight, after the next fight, and so on. Who knows what will be. But one of the things that's interesting, you have a guy, in boxing, you have Bernard Hopkins, you have Randy Cortez, you mentioned, in mixed martial arts. Will we get to more of a world of guys fighting in their 40s, late 40s? Is this going to be the world we live in right now with all this technology, with strength and conditioning and so on? Do you see that occurring, or at some point do these guys say, I don't want these injuries to have life-damaging effects past my career, I'm getting out before I get hurt?
Well, I mean, everybody's going to make that decision on their own. I've seen guys who've made the opposite decision, and, it's been to their detriment. But I look at a guy like Randy who started wrestling when he, was probably 5 or 6 years old.
Right.
And to start something that young, the body learns to adapt. So as you're older, you're still doing well. You're still fighting and training like a young person because you've been training all your life. It's guys who come into the sport older whose bodies aren't weathered to that, who aren't going to survive. But now you have kids who are coming in. I have a mixed martial arts program here for kids as young as 4 years old. Not learning the same type of mixed martial arts as that a guy is doing on TV, but they're learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they're learning some striking, they're learning some wrestling. And, those kids are going to be monsters, like your Pettits and your McDonald's and your young guys like that who started out in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts and wrestling and stuff. They're going to be monsters. And who knows how long a guy like that can have a career? Who knows how long Anthony Pettit can have a career? Again, it's going to be all dependent upon what kind of fighting career he has. Does he take a lot of punishment? Does he get beat up a lot? Does he take a lot of headshots? What kind of training is he doing? Because now if you have guys who are doing this from a much younger age, if they're not training smart, then if they're sparring every day and they're taking heavy blows every day, then no, I don't even know if they'll make it to 40 because their bodies won't be able to handle that kind of abuse from, 18 years old or 16, 17, 18 years old. But I definitely think you could see guys fighting longer, maybe not in the UFC, because certainly the UFC is going to be a better home for younger, explosive guys. But I definitely, you see Anderson doing it at 38, so why couldn't other guys who come into this continue to fight and have these long, illustrious careers?
Great point. We're speaking with Rory Singer here on Lewis Live and Israel Sports Radio. Before we get to some of your fighters coming up with their big fights, I got to ask you, we talked about John Jones' toe injury. In your career, what was the worst injury that you had to deal with and fight through and try to persevere even though it was a painful injury?
In a fight?
Yeah.
Well, probably one of the worst injuries I had in a fight was I took a knee to the head. I needed like 19 stitches after that between my skull. It was pretty cool. But I wasn't able to fight through that because I was bleeding quite a bit. When I fought Ed Herman in the semifinals on the show, in that first round, it wasn't necessarily apparent, but in that first round, I twisted my ankle badly enough that after that fight, I was on crutches for a couple weeks.
Wow.
I felt it. It hurt. But I didn't obviously win that fight. But that was probably one of the worst that happened to me in a fight. Now, I've been injured outside of training, where I've been in forearm cast, like ruptured my bursa sac of my elbow. I needed surgery after my fight against Jason McDonald because I'd done some damage to my shoulder, both before and then during, I'm sure. But as far as having anything like really, really bad happen that I had to kind of like look at and go, holy, my toe is facing in the wrong direction or that's my bone. Nothing like that has really ever happened that I can remember.
All right. So, thank God for that. And interesting stuff because obviously playing with injuries in sports, in mainstream sports, is a part of the game. And mixed martial arts is a sport, and it's something that it occurs. But the difference, of course, referee has to allow it. The fight has to continue. And you have doctors, if they say, no, he can't go, then it doesn't matter what the athlete wants to do. Let's go to some of your fighters. Of course, you have the gym, as you mentioned. And we were talking before in the green room about some of your fighters. So talk about, first, you have a good heavyweight that's won 5 fights in a row. Talk a bit about him and his upcoming fights.
Yeah, Nick Smiley, who's got a couple, regional titles. Just won the Conflict MMA heavyweight title just a couple weeks ago. Unfortunately, blew out his shoulder and is going to need some shoulder surgery, so he's going to be sidelined for some months, 6 to 8 months. He actually has a brother who used to play in the NFL. Was a lineman in the NFL for 7, 8 years. I think his name is Justin Smiley, and so he comes from a family of athletes. Just a big, strong, athletic heavyweight. Trained with us for a good bit. Went away for a little bit. Came back. Had a couple fights with us here. This Conflict MMA fight being the most recent, and went out and fought a guy who had some really heavy hands, some good knockouts, and just went out there and just grabbed him up, and a lot of knees, a lot of elbows. Ended up dropping him, getting the ref stoppage, and probably looked as good as I've ever seen him look. And unfortunately, now he's going to be out for a little bit after he has some surgery. Well, we got Nick, and then I've got my next most recent fight coming up is going to be Brian Bowles. So that's a big deal. He's fighting on Facebook this Saturday against George Roop. Last time he fought in the UFC was against Uriah Faber, and that didn't obviously go very well. He's been off for at least a year, if not over a year. So, they never cut him, which was great. And they gave him this opportunity to fight Roop, who I think has had like 1 or 2 fights at 135 now. And this is a big fight for him because Roop's the kind of guy he should beat. And if you can't beat Roop, then, who knows? He's coming off his loss against Faber, 1 year layoffs here and there because of injuries sustained during fights. And but former world champion, they kept him. They gave him a good opportunity to show that he still belongs, and he's got this big fight coming up. And then I've got Lawson McClure, who's fighting on June 1st. He's fighting in Charleston, South Carolina, and that's a big fight for him. And stepping up a weight class from 145 to 155. So we definitely got some good things going on. I've got some amateurs that are training hard and fighting and looking good, and nothing but looking for the future for all these guys and seeing what they can do with their careers.
Now, I wanted to know from your perspective, what is like the transition going from being a fighter in the cage to basically working with these guys, coaching these guys? Tell us that difference, what that's been like for you, and how you've gone through that change.
Really, I've always been a coach. I've always coached alongside Adam. Adam's the head coach and always been. He's been my head coach. Forrest's head coach, Brian's. We've had a host of guys going to the highest levels in the UFC and Bellator and Strikeforce. He's always been the head coach. It's always started with him, where I've been like the assistant head coach. And we've had him with another one of our coaches, Chad Schaefer, who's really over the last few years blossomed, and it's kind of like our secret weapon. He's basically like Brian's main coach because he's a little bit closer to Brian's size. Incredible hand holder, brown belt. But so I've always been sort of, even when I was fighting, I was still helping coach and teach classes. So really the transition that I believe I've made more recently has been from fighter/coach to coach/full-time gym owner. A lot of my time is now spent on trying to grow this gym and grow this business, because this is what I do full time is run this gym. My brother has a full-time job on top of being a coach here, but he has a full-time job. So I run, I'm running this day to day with my manager, Luke. But that's really the transition I've made is having to really just kind of put the fighting on the back burner, knowing that I just don't want to put the time and effort into getting ready for anything anymore like that. So I'm in here every night. I'm training because I'm still a valuable training partner to my bigger guys. But I see it happen. I'm 37 years old this month. I'm not a spring chicken anymore. So I do what I can, and I train hard, and I keep myself in shape, and I make sure that these doors stay open and the bills get paid.
Which is obviously the most important thing. We're speaking with Rory Sinner here on Lewis Live on Israel Sports Radio. Talk a bit about your gym. Obviously you're getting guys who want to fight professionally. Do you also get guys who like the sport, but they're not interested in a professional career, but they want to do it as a hobby, if you will, or exercise, get in shape, etc.? So do you have those type of people walk into your place as well?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, our gym runs on those people. We've got, maybe 250 members, whether they're our kids and our adults, our women's only boot camp, our Fit You Women Only boot camp program, or our Guerrilla Warriors, fitness kickboxing program, that is the lifeblood of the business, I should say. The hardcore gym was grown on the fighters and Forrest and myself, and then Brian and Steven Ledbetter, and we had guys like Micah Miller here, and Scott Barrett, who's a rising heavyweight, and Carmelo Morero spent time here. We've had a lot of guys spend time here, but I'd say it's probably 10% of the people that are in this room who compete, and most people are here, and we call them hobbyists. They're here. They love mixed martial arts. It's helped change their lives, whether it's to lose weight, to get in shape, kick drug habits, or just find a brotherhood, whether, and I say that not as a gender, but just a thing, because I have women who train with us also, and women who've competed for us. But that's a small percentage that the fighters, the amateur professional fighters, most people are here because they love mixed martial arts. It's one of the best workouts you'll find. It's great for self-defense. And then they can compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments, and submission grappling tournaments. And then every now and again, a person realizes that I'm doing this. I'm getting kind of good at it. I'm in good shape now because I've moved up from the beginner program to the more intermediate and advanced programs. And then one day they say, I want to fight. And then we say, okay. I don't care if they do or don't. If we never had another person fight for this gym, it wouldn't kill me as long as we were still here for everyone who wanted to do what they wanted to do. You know what I'm saying? But people want to fight, so we're here. We're good at it. We've got 2 world champions that have come out of this gym. But if you want to fight, you come and tell us. You try out for the fight team. And then we slowly move you to the place where you're competing and training with my amateurs and professionals and me and all the higher level guys. And then when we think you're ready and you think you're ready, we'll sit down and talk about it and find you something.
Great stuff. That's awesome. I mean, that is kind of a dream of anyone out there who wants to be an athlete, fight on a stage, that they have an opportunity. They obviously have to put the work in. They have to have talent and skill, but obviously a lot of hard work there. Last question before we let you go. We've talked about the gym. Let's give you a plug for the gym. Tell us how people could find out more about what you do, your work, and how they can get in touch with you.
They can get in touch with us by calling 706-850-8444. And come in, schedule an appointment with one of our consultants to get a gym tour. We do a free consultation. We do a free private lesson. We got a 30-day free trial, a 60-day money-back guarantee. We know that we can offer all those things because when you walk through the door and you see this place and everything on the wall and you see the coaches and the history background of this place, people are going to become members and want to train here. Then go online at thehardcoregym.com. or Athens Fitness and Mixed Martial Arts.com, Athens MMA, Athens BJJ. Just type in Athens, Georgia Mixed Martial Arts, and if you can't find my website, your computer screen is turned off. So, I made it so that if you want to find out, if you want to do what we're doing inside this gym, you are going to find one of my websites. You're going to find our phone number, and like I said, give a call. Someone's answering the phone 24 hours a day, and we'll set you up a time to come in and see what we're all about. And once you come to the doors, we'll tell you how you can get started with us and join the Hardcore Gym family.
All right. Great stuff, Rory. So happy to hear you're successful and you're doing what you want to do and helping others fight and be part of mixed martial arts. Thank you also for the breakdown of the big John Jones-Anderson Silva fight. Rory Sinner here on Lewis Live and Israel Sports Radio. We will be in touch. Thank you so much for being on the program today.
Thank you for having me on again, guys.
Absolutely. Be well out there.
All right. Bye-bye.
Rory Sinner, wow, really entertaining stuff. It was great to catch up with him. Like I mentioned, the last time he was on the program was 3 years ago. I don't know how that happened. That was a very entertaining interview, so I apologize to the fans for not having Rory on sooner than that. But he has the gym. That's just great stuff. I really like that because if you're a fighter out there in the Athens, Georgia area and you maybe think, I have a dream of fighting one day in a cage in some tournament, you'll have an opportunity to have a shot. That's really all you could ask for. So Rory Sinner, and again, give us the breakdown. Anderson Silva versus John Jones. You think John Jones is going to win? John Jones is 25 years old, and Anderson Silva is 38. Anderson Silva could be the greatest UFC fighter of all time. Dana White has gone out to say he's the greatest mixed martial artist of all time. And John Jones, though, could be at Anderson Silva's place at some point. He's got a long career to go, especially if he stays healthy, injury-free. But we'll see. John Jones has already been put up on a pedestal and dodged a defeat by beating Chalasona with the ground and pound. Again, as I talked about, he had a toe injury, would have not gone to the second round most likely. And Rory, right spot on. If you know Chalasona, the guy likes to talk, and had he won, even if it would have been cheap, he would have never stopped talking about it. It would have went on and on how he's a champion, but no one really would have respected that. All right, we're going to take a commercial break. On the other side, good to have on our Philadelphia insider, Rory Bluestein. We'll get a breakdown of the NBA playoffs. We're in the West Finals and the East Finals. Spurs up 2-0 over the Memphis Grizzlies. Heat and Pacers kick off their game tonight, game one of the East Finals. Is this a coronation for LeBron James and the Miami Heat, or will they have a tough battle against the Indiana Pacers? We'll find out on the other side of this break. This is Lewis live on IsraelSportsRadio.com.
You're tuned in to the only all-sports talk network in the Middle East, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Hey folks, Kagan here. As you know, I'm always staying on top of the fitness world, keeping up with current trends. One form of exercise that's been around for ages and is currently being rediscovered is suspension bodyweight training. So if you're looking for a way to get in shape, improve your health, and train your body to move in new ways, then the X1 by Israel Gym Systems is for you. Find out more on our website at www.israelgym.com or look for our page on Facebook, Israel Gym Systems X1. Israel Gym X1, Higia Hazman.
You're already using a credit card every day. Why not feel good every time you make a purchase? When using the HAS Advantage Support Israel Visa card, a percentage of each purchase you make will be donated to your choice of 24 Israeli-based charities, while still earning a reward point for every dollar spent. But wait, these rewards are even better than the standard rewards you get, especially when using them towards Israel travel, with the best conversion rate on El Al's Matmeed frequent flyer program. Earn double points at some of your favorite supermarkets and restaurants in the U.S., as well as discounts all over Israel. If you love traveling and supporting Israel, HAS Advantage is the card for you. Just give us a call toll-free at 1-866-6-ISRAEL. Sign up right now with the code ISR10 to earn 2,500 bonus points. That's 1-866-647-7235. HAS Advantage. Earn rewards. Support Israel. Offer valid for U.S. citizens only. Terms and conditions do apply. When dialing from within Israel, please dial 1-800-200-818.
Israel Sports Dynamics specializes in football consulting, equipment, uniforms, and more. Great brands such as Nike, Russell Athletics, Schutt Sports Products, and many more. Just one call away. With over 30 years coaching experience with university and professional athletes, Harry Hill, owner of ISD, can advise you for all your sports needs. Call 054-581-3248. That's 054-581-3248, or visit our website at www.isdisrael.com. If that's not easy enough, click on the ISD banner on the Israel Sports Radio website and be part of the game.
Are you tired of paying for expensive gym memberships that you don't use? Are you frustrated by not seeing results? It's time for the X1. Israel Gym Systems is proud to launch the X1 suspension and bodyweight training system. Lose weight, build muscle, improve balance, coordination, and flexibility. With your purchase of the X1, you'll receive a free membership to IsraelGym.com and access to our archives of videos and exercise plans. Sign up today at www.IsraelGym.com and get ready for the new you. Israel Gym X1. Higia Hazman.
Broadcasting live from Israel.
IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Back here on Lewis Live on Israel Sports Radio, still smiling and laughing from the Rory Singer interview. That was really entertaining stuff, very funny. And congrats to Rory on his gym and his fighters coming up with their next big fights. We're going to switch gears a little bit now and talk about the NBA for the next hour. We will talk about the West Finals and the East Finals. Again, West Finals, as I said already, the San Antonio Spurs 2-0 lead over the Memphis Grizzlies. East Finals kicks off tonight, Miami Heat versus the Indiana Pacers. And on the line right now to break down the NBA playoffs up to this point and the West Finals and the East Finals, our good friend, Philadelphia insider, Rory Bluestein. Rory, welcome back to Lewis Live on IsraelSportsRadio.com.
It feels good to be back. Thanks for having me on, Ari.
Absolutely. So before we get to these conference finals, let's get a little bit of the recap of the semis, especially Warriors versus the Spurs. And I feel like Steph Curry just had a fantastic season, MVP candidate season, and the Warriors will be around. This is going to be a team on the rise. You might have one or two experts pick them to go to the NBA Finals next year, and you're seeing a trend of these young teams like Oklahoma City and the Memphis Grizzlies do well. So talk a bit about the Warriors season and why did they fall up short in the semis against the Spurs?
Well, I think it just came down to experience there, Ari. Obviously the Spurs have been around with Parker and Duncan and Ginobili. They're all healthy together. Who knows if that's going to happen again. They're getting some help from some other younger role players like Danny Green, Kawhi Leonard, Gary Neal, Tiago Splitter. So they're getting some help from some good role players. And I think that's pretty much what it just came down to was the experience and the Spurs defense and the veteran leadership took over. And Tony Parker just had a great series. You look at the Warriors, they had a great season. I think going into the season, nobody really expected them to make any type of noise, but they got into the playoffs after a very respectable season. And I knew that they would be a tough take for the Nuggets, who a lot of people were behind as a team that could potentially win the West. And I thought the Warriors played very well against a very good Denver team in the quarterfinals. And you're right about the Warriors being a very good young team. Stephen Curry, obviously, he's the big name. He had a phenomenal season. He's going to be a mainstay in the NBA for years to come. I thought Klay Thompson had a phenomenal year. I don't know if people expected him to turn into this type of player. Everyone knew that he could shoot coming out of Washington State, and obviously he has the genetics on his side with his father being an NBA player as well. So I think that definitely this Warriors team will be a team to contend with. They had David Lee suffering the injury, and I think he wasn't 100% when he actually did play. And I thought Harrison Barnes played a phenomenal playoff series as well, and he's a very young player, and he'll be a guy to be reckoned with for many years to come as well. So if the Warriors get to the conference finals next year with the declining Spurs team, and who knows what the Thunder are going to be like next year with Westbrook coming off the injury, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
All right, now let's go over to the other West semifinals, and that is the Thunder and the Grizzlies. Now, if you pick the Thunder before the postseason or before the injury, it wouldn't be such a bad pick. Obviously, you see Westbrook's value to the team when he goes down. They're just not the same. What is the latest status of the injury? What do you expect him to do next season? And does this lower Kevin Durant's status? Kevin Durant originally was kind of excited because he was going to handle the ball, and he talked about that, was very vocal about that, and you saw that he just can't do everything. He can't be the top shooter, top scorer, and be the top point man. So talk a bit about that injury with Westbrook. What do you expect to see? And obviously that was the main key why they lost to the Grizzlies. Had they had Westbrook, in your opinion, do they pull out that series against Memphis?
Yeah, I think they do. I think they're a better team than Memphis. Even without Westbrook, the Thunder were in the games, even in the games that Durant didn't shoot well, including the last game. I believe he shot 5 of 21 in the last game where they lost to the Grizzlies to close out the series. Going to Westbrook's injury first, which was your first point there, we'll see how he comes back next year. And that's kind of what I said earlier when we were talking about the Warriors. I wouldn't be surprised to see them in the finals because of the Westbrook factor. We'll see how he recovers. You took a look at Derrick Rose when he got injured in the playoffs. He didn't play for the remainder of the season. Obviously, ACL is a little different. I believe Westbrook was the Achilles, correct? What was Westbrook's exact injury?
Yeah, I believe that was. And don't worry, we'll talk plenty about Derrick Rose coming up next. But, sorry, go ahead and continue out Westbrook, please.
Yeah, so I think it's a different injury, and we'll see. But even here in Philadelphia, Ryan Howard suffered the Achilles injury 2 years ago in the NLDS against the Cardinals in the last play of the game, and he hasn't been 100%. So I don't know how it's going to affect Westbrook, who relies on his quickness and his jumping athletic ability, and who knows if he'll ever be the same ever again. So, and talking about Durant, I don't think it lowers him, because if you look at LeBron James when he was on the Cleveland Cavaliers, he had nobody as well, and that's kind of what I relate this situation to. Obviously, Durant, with his number 2 being Reggie Jackson, that's not going to be, obviously we're not talking about Reggie Jackson, the baseball player.
Right.
But when you're looking at that, I mean, Reggie Jackson's playing 42 minutes in the final game there, He did have a decent performance, but he's not Russell Westbrook. So Durant had no help. And again, I compare it to LeBron James in Cleveland. He had no help. I do put LeBron James above Kevin Durant as being able to put his team on his back because LeBron is that type of player. Durant is more of a scorer. James is more of an all-around player. But I don't lessen Durant at all. I still think he's a top 5 player, probably top 2 with him and LeBron James. I think that, Durant, if the Thunder can make some adjustments and draft well, because they do have a lottery pick from that trade with James Harden, they do have a chance to get a good young player in the draft. And, in free agency, we'll see what they can do and build the team around Durant. And I think they'll still be a contender next year, no matter what happens with Westbrook.
All right, quick correction. Westbrook actually had a suffer of a slight tear in his right meniscus, not the Achilles, but very devastating injury. Of course, he is 24 years old, so he's very young, so he will have time to recuperate. We'll see if his career is the same as it was before the injury. Let's go Bulls and Heat. Get a recap of that series. Derrick Rose, the main story that he did not play. He had been scrimmaging with the team. My sources have told me from 2 to 3 months, full scrimmages, full practices. A lot of people were saying he should be out there. And it sounded like it was management's decision not to put their 24-year-old former MVP star on the court. The feeling was they weren't going to beat the Heat anyway. Why take a chance? Why risk it? What were your thoughts on Derrick Rose not playing? And my guess, I'm sure you think the same way, the Heat would have won that series whether D. Rose is on the court or not.
Yeah, I would agree. And just to pick up on the Westbrook point, even if it's a knee injury, it's still the same issue with his athletic ability. And then, getting to Derrick Rose, I think it was a wise decision by management. You look at the Bulls, they were able to beat the Heat in Game 1. Obviously, they have a very good team around Derrick Rose with guys like Deng and Joakim Noah and Heinrich. Some other veteran players. I'm not sure if Rick Hamilton will be back, but, they do have a good team. And other than Derrick Rose, the Bulls had a lot of injury problems with Luol Deng and Kirk Heinrich, 2 guys I just mentioned. So even if Derrick Rose was back, Deng and Heinrich were at 100%. They weren't playing all the time. So they had no chance to beat the Heat in an actual 7-game series. So I think that was a wise decision. And I think next year the Bulls will certainly be up there, probably, be picked to finish maybe 2, 3, or 4 in the East. Obviously that will depend on what happens going forward. I'm sure we'll talk about the Eastern Conference Finals a little bit later here in this segment. But I think it was a wise decision. Now, if the Bulls had a team full strength with Deng and Heinrich 100%, then maybe they bring back Derrick Rose, especially maybe if Chicago can, win Game 3, let's say, and they're up in the series 2-1. That's a different story. But I think that was a wise decision. Obviously, Derrick Rose wasn't 100%. Otherwise, he would have played. And with that type of injury and a franchise player like Derrick Rose, you don't want to take that chance when you're probably going to lose no matter what.
Yeah, good point there. We're on the line right now with Rory Bluestein and Lewis live on Israel Sports Radio. Let's get a recap of Pacers versus the Knicks. Pacers, the lower seed, did not have the home court advantage. They win in 6 games. We had on play-by-play man of the Atlanta Hawks, Bob Rathbun, and I asked him why are the Knicks struggling. He said basically the Knicks only had 3 ways they could score. Carmelo Anthony on an ISO, Carmelo with a pick and roll, and basically an outside jump shot. So when that went south, that was kind of it. What was your take? How were the Pacers, in many eyes, able to get an upset in the East semis?
Well, it wasn't an upset to me. I know it was a 3 over a 2, but I thought the Pacers were going to win the series no matter what. The Pacers are more of a complete team, which we could talk about that, when we talk about the finals matchup. But, New York, like you said, that the Atlanta play-by-play commentator mentioned, Carmelo Anthony was the heart and soul of the team offensively. They didn't play a ton of defense. Amari, yeah, he came back, but, he isn't the Amari of old.
Right.
And, other than that, you've got J.R. Smith, you've got Raymond Felton. Okay, you've got some good role players, but the way Indiana plays team basketball on both ends of the floor and the way they have the big man Roy Hibbert anchoring down the center of that defense and a pure scorer like Paul George, and a great point guard in George Hill, that's really no match for just a one-man team, and it's kind of like the way the Grizzlies beat the Thunder. The Grizzlies are a complete team as opposed to the Thunder being maybe a 1 or 2-man type of operation if Westbrook is healthy. It's the same kind of thing. New York, a one-man operation with Carmelo. and Indiana being a full team. And also, if you look at the way the regular season trended, New York was hot at the beginning and kind of was so-so towards the end. And Indiana just got stronger and stronger as the season went on. So, they had the momentum. They were playing good basketball at the right time, and that's why the Pacers won.
All right, let's go and talk about the West Finals right now. Spurs up 2 in the series. Game 1, after the 22 blowout victory, a lot of people on ESPN and around the horn saw it, said this series is over. Memphis can't play with the Spurs. They lost the first game. They are starstruck, etc. Game 2 goes into overtime, and had Memphis pulled that out, they would have the home court advantage going for the rest of the series. So they are down 2-0. In your eyes, is this a series, or is this simply a coronation for the Spurs to win another West championship?
Well, we'll see what happens in Game 3. I think, obviously, if Spurs win Game 3, then it's definitely over. I wouldn't count the Grizzlies out yet. You have to look at what happened in Game 1. Zach Randolph was 1 for 8 shooting. The Spurs absolutely shut him down. In Game 2, Randolph was a little bit better, but I don't think much better. I think he scored in the low teens, if I'm not mistaken. So Zach Randolph is the man on that team. And what the Grizzlies have to do is they have to get the ball inside to Zach Randolph, and they can work that inside-outside game and kick it outside, and Marc Gasol can live around the perimeter and then get those second-chance opportunities like he's very good at doing. But Zach Randolph has to come to play. So I think that if Randolph can come to play, then the Grizzlies have a chance. Mike Conley is a very good point guard. Obviously I mentioned Gasol is a very good player as well. But outside of that, the Grizzlies don't have a lot. So I would say the Spurs will probably ultimately win the series, and I thought that going in. Obviously, the blowout in Game 1 kind of threw me off a little bit, but I wouldn't count the Grizzlies out quite yet with Zach Randolph in there and Marc Gasol. That the Grizzlies do have the physicality to deal with the Spurs. And you just saw the Grizzlies almost beat the Spurs the other night.
Right.
The Spurs down the stretch made the big shots. Duncan had a big shot. Tony Parker had, I believe, like 18 assists, something like that. So when the Spurs are doing that, it's going to be hard to beat them no matter what. But we'll see. I'm not counting the Grizzlies quite out yet, but I do think the Spurs ultimately will win the series probably in 5 games.
All right, let's talk about a matchup of Mike Conley versus Tony Parker. And what happened, this is a long time ago, but in 2004, Spurs had a 2-0 lead against the Los Angeles Lakers. And because Tony Parker, the pick and roll, Shaq didn't show, they made that adjustment, and the Lakers did win 4 games in a row, partly due to a miracle shot by Derek Fisher with 0.4 seconds left, which I still don't know how that's mathematically possible, but that's a whole other story. Mike Conley versus Tony Parker, break down that matchup for us, because I think Conley is going to have to somehow win that matchup for Memphis to be victorious in the series.
Well, Conley's a nice player, but I don't think he's going to win that matchup. I mean, Tony Parker had an MVP-type season this year. Like I just mentioned, he had about 18 assists last night. I think that was the exact number. If Parker is not making his shots, he's finding ways to get people the ball. And the way the Spurs work and the way they've always worked since Greg Popovich has taken over back to the years when they won the first championship with David Robinson, Tim Duncan, and my buddy here in Philadelphia, Malik Rose. They play team basketball. And if it's not Parker, it's going to be Ginobili. If it's not Ginobili, then they're going to get contributions from Gary Neal and Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green. And that's the way their offense works. And they play team defense, and the way they play defense will keep them in every game. So I think Parker's going to win the battle no matter what. I think Conley has to hold his own and, learn how the Spurs use that pick and roll and try and defend it to the best of his ability, working along with the bigs of Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph. But Conley's a very nice player. He's not Tony Parker, though, unfortunately.
Great point. Also, MVP type of season. It seems to be, even though Duncan is still there and Duncan has been the man with 2 MVPs, it kind of feels like Tony Parker's team at this point. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I would say so. I think over the last couple of years, Tony Parker has kind of taken over the team. Ginobili's had some injury problems, but he was never like the leader guy. He was just like the big shot guy. He wasn't the leader on the court. And, Tony Parker's done a phenomenal job. I remember when he was drafted by the Spurs, he was thrown into the fire right away because
right.
Avery Johnson was retiring. So he's done a very nice job. And if you look at the NBA draft history, I know we just had the draft lottery last night. You look at the history, Parker was drafted, I believe, somewhere between 25 and 30, probably one of the best late first-round draft picks ever by any team.
Yeah, and I recall back around the early 2000s, you had Tony Parker, a 19-year-old kid, and on national TV, I remember Greg Popovich pulling him out, yelling at him because he wasn't doing things correctly and shaking his head. It seemed like he had a tough time in the beginning, but that certainly has paid off up to this point as he's a leader. People forget, because Tony Parker's been around for so long. He's 31 years old. That's it. So he still has a lot of basketball left to go. And you're right, he was the 28th pick overall back in 2001. And if you remember that draft, Kwame Brown was the number 1 pick. So certainly some bad picking occurring there in that particular draft. Going back to this West Final Series, if I'm Memphis, you have Jared Bayless scoring 18 points off the bench, and Tayshaun Prince only scored 2. I mean, do you make that change and get Bayless as a starter somehow, or do you like him coming off the bench if you're a Memphis fan?
I probably like him coming off the bench because the Spurs have some size. And, if you put Bayless and Conley in there, you're basically playing with 2 point guards. I know they have decent size for being point guards. They're not under 6 feet or anything. But, you're dealing with Tony Parker, who's, 6'2", 6'3". You've got Ginobili in there, and then you've got the big small forward in Kawhi Leonard, and then Duncan and Splitter up top. You've got some size. And obviously the front court of the Grizzlies can compare. But I guess you want to keep Prince in there. He's got the experience, played against the Spurs in the playoffs before. And he also always has the potential to go off for a big game. And if Bayless scored 18 points off the bench, and I believe he played 30-plus minutes, then keep him there. Sometimes guys are better coming off the bench, and, I would keep him there. And the way the Grizzlies played in Game 2, other than Zach Randolph having a subpar game again, I think that they did okay. They took the Spurs to overtime in San Antonio. So I would say, keep with that strategy, and then just try and get the ball to Zach Randolph a little more and hope that he can put the ball in the bucket for 20-plus points.
Now, if you go to the Spurs, you go to Game 2. Fascinating, balanced scoring. Not a single player on the Spurs scores more than 17 points. Obviously, no one in the 20s, but you have 5 guys in double figures. Green, Splitter, Leonard, Duncan, Parter, all the starters have over 10 points in double figures. So this just seems to be a machine in San Antonio. Yes, you have Tony Parker, who's probably the star, but everybody does something. Everybody contributes if they're on the floor playing for Greg Popovich. So talk about Popovich's system, how he's able to get everybody involved with the offense.
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier. If it's not Parker stepping up, it's going to be Ginobili, or it's going to be Green or Leonard, or it's going to be Duncan and Splitter down low. They just play phenomenal team basketball. It's something that you don't see often in NBA anymore. You see it more in the college game where they play more of a team game. The NBA, where it's been focused to the superstars, it's a lot of isolations and, the Spurs do run the pick and roll, but, sometimes it's just 2 guys that are just running pick and roll and the rest of the guys are just standing around. Greg Popovich has done a phenomenal job, and I know the Spurs are not the exciting team, but, believe it or not, this team is a dynasty. You go back to that, the original lockout shortened season back in '99 when I started following the Spurs because Philadelphia's own Malik Rose was on the team, and I followed the team pretty religiously ever since. Popovich just does a great job running the show. And, he has his superstars that he's groomed. Tim Duncan, a 4-year player at Wake Forest, a fundamental guy. He's a gentleman of the game. Tony Parker, he's from France, and Ginobili also from Argentina. So he's worked in these international guys and turned them into superstars. They weren't superstars coming into the league. Maybe Duncan was, but Parker and Ginobili certainly wasn't. He had to mold them, and he's put the role players around him. If you go back to, when I mentioned Malik Rose, he had Malik Rose and Jared Jackson. Then he brought in, other role players. Like you look at what he has now with Gary Neal, Kawhi Leonard, and Danny Green, and Tiago Splitter. And who heard of these guys before they came into the league? He just does a phenomenal job at putting the right pieces around his superstars, and they have great chemistry, and that's what makes it work. It's not about getting as many superstars in free agency as possible, although that's worked for the Heat, but that's a very rare case. A lot of teams try to follow that model, like the New York Knicks, like the Brooklyn Nets, and it really hasn't worked out. The Spurs have used a different model, and they have 4 championships under their belt, and they're competitive every year. So it's worked, and you got to credit Greg Popovich and the front office of the San Antonio Spurs for getting it to work that way in what is a rarity in today's NBA.
It's interesting because the Spurs, for whatever reason, were kind of under the mindset, if you will, or the attention of the Lakers, because the Lakers were flashier. Talk about the days of Shaq and Kobe. But if you go from 1999 to 2007, in that 8-year span, 9 seasons, the Spurs won 4 titles. Duncan won 2 MVPs. Spurs were always competitive in the West Finals, even in the years they did not win the titles. So very impressive stuff for Greg Popovich. Now, scheduling-wise, I find this very fascinating. The West Finals have already had 2 games before we have Game 1 tonight with the Heat and the Pacers. But then if you look at the scheduling going for the rest of the series, these 2 teams, the Spurs and the Grizzlies, do not play Game 3 until Saturday night, so the East Finals could get in 2 games to catch up. And that's a disadvantage to Memphis, in my opinion. They just lost a tough game in overtime. They now are going to have to think about it 4 days before they go back home. So did David Stern make a mistake somehow with the scheduling, or was this really something he couldn't control?
You know, I'm not really sure. Obviously, I'm not in the NBA front office, and I don't know why this decision was made. It obviously, to any person, it doesn't seem logical. But
right.
My only guess is there, Ari, that it's a TV and money issue. Obviously, the Spurs and the Grizzlies are not the attractive series because you don't have the flashy superstars. I think more people are going to watch the Heat, obviously, with LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh. And I guess somebody decided that they want to have it Wednesday and Friday night as the Heat series, that the ratings will be higher because they're not competing with other things on television. Maybe they didn't want the Heat competing with Dancing with the Stars. I don't know. Who knows exactly what it was, but I can guarantee you that the TV ratings and the money had something to do with the way the schedule went down.
You know what? Those guys in the suits, they're in the suits for a reason. They know what they're doing. They're smart with this kind of stuff, so I guess that's why, as I talked about at the beginning of this the show, again, I don't know how this will work out, but if it's the Spurs and the Heat in the finals, I don't know if this is an advantage for the Heat, probably for the Spurs, depending if they sweep, if they get a rest. I don't know. I mean, it's a very, very funky schedule, so it's hard to argue there. Let's go now to the East Finals. We'll switch there for a few more minutes with you. Frank Vogel came out with some comments that were kind of confusing or misinterpreted. He said something to the effect of the Heat are just another team, and LeBron James was upset about that. He said, we're not just another team, we're a great team. Frank Vogel somewhat apologized and said, that's not what I meant. I was saying they're the next team in line. Talk about those comments. Is this just something for LeBron James to get fired up for tonight's Game 1 against the Pacers?
Well, I think LeBron. I don't really know. Let me get to the Pacers first before I get into LeBron, because I'm not a huge LeBron fan. So
okay.
I'll kind of collect my thoughts on that one for a second. But you look at Indiana. I play sports. I'm sure anybody who's out there plays sports. You look at the team who you're playing, but when you're working on a game, and I see this day in, day out with the Drexel Dragons because I'm on the road with them. Obviously, for those of you who don't know, I'm the play-by-play commentator for Drexel women's basketball. They treat each team the same. They go through their run-throughs the same. They go through their scouting reports the same. They take a look at what tasks need to be done defensively against the certain players the same way. Obviously, it changes from team to team, but they go about their rituals the same way. So I think what Coach Bowman was basically saying was that we're not treating this like, oh, we're going against the Miami Heat and LeBron James. Oh my goodness, the defending champion. We're going about this like this is the next team on our schedule. We have to go about this and prepare the same way we've done all season and all during the playoffs and get ready to play. It wasn't a slap in the face like, oh, this is just another team. We're going to dispose of them. And I think LeBron took it the wrong way and he overreacted. And that's because LeBron is I think a little bit insecure about the way people think about him, because people don't like him because of the way he left Cleveland, and they look at him as an evil guy on Miami, and I think he's got to defend himself, saying, "Oh, we're great," and yada yada yada. So I am with the Pacers coach in coming out with the statement, and I'm with him issuing the apology. I know exactly what he meant by the comments, but I think LeBron just overreacted a little bit. So that's all I'm going to say about that, because then I'm going to get into some LeBron bashing, and I don't want to make anybody, offended who likes LeBron.
All right, so now let's actually break down the series. Pacers and Heat played last year. Pacers took them to 6 games. They were getting a couple of wins. But I just think this is a different team. I mean, I think the Heat win this in 5. I don't think there'll be much of a fight, but obviously, LeBron is the key. They're going to perhaps try hard physical play. The Pacers have a bit of a big team, so perhaps that will be the game plan. I mean, what is the strategy to try to stop LeBron James if there is such a strategy out there?
Well, it's got to be a total effort. That's really the bottom line. Obviously, everybody's talking about Indiana and their length. They'll be able to compete with the length of LeBron James and Chris Bosh. And I definitely think that's true. Indiana, their players down low. It's Roy Hibbert in the middle and David West, the power forward. And then obviously you've got Paul George, who's a lengthy 6'8", can certainly, match up with LeBron James. But it's not going to be a one-on-one effort. It's going to be a team effort. And I think that, the key is obviously LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Bosh can all shoot from the outside. They can all drive inside. And I think the key for Indiana is they have to stop LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Bosh from scoring inside the paint or at least close to the basket. And I think that's going to be up to Roy Hibbert. Roy Hibbert has to be that anchor inside. They cannot allow a lot of second-chance opportunities, and that's going to be up to Indiana as a team boxing out LeBron and also Hibbert grabbing the boards away from LeBron James and Chris Bosh. And I think that's really how Miami wins a lot of their games, is because they have the size and athletic ability inside with those three guys, and no other team has that. And even though Indiana doesn't have that man-for-man, they do have some size and some strength at the three front court positions with Paul George, David West, and Roy Hibbert. So it's going to be an interesting series. I know you just said Miami in 5. I'm actually going to say Miami in 7. I think this series is going the distance. I'm not going to say the Pacers are going to win, but I think that if Indiana can steal one in Miami, and then most likely it'll be a split in Indiana, you're going to have a 2-2 series going into Game 5, and I think that is an extreme likelihood if Roy Hibbert can hold down the post for Indiana.
All right, now, by the way, so you're taking the Heat in 5, but you're not going to also take the Pacers – I mean, the Heat in 7, but you're not going to also take the Pacers in 5, right, like last year with the finals?
No. I'm not going to hedge here. I know I've hedged in the past, but I'm going to say Miami still wins this. But Indiana is definitely going to make this a very interesting series.
All right. Now, one of the things, so the Pacers, well, they have a couple of disadvantages. But one of them is the fact experience. I believe there's been only one player on the Pacers currently who's played a conference final. You have a bunch of experience with the Heat. Obviously, they just won the title. But even more than just that, a couple of trips to the conference finals. LeBron had 2 trips with Cleveland, and this is his 3rd trip with the Heat. You have Udonis Haslem and Dwayne Wade, who were on the 06 championship team. How much does experience play in a factor in going to these finals for both ball clubs?
Well, it's an interesting point because I think, when you talk about the Spurs and Grizzlies, you give the Spurs the experience edge, and that's probably why they'll end up winning the series. And I think you got to give the same edge to the Miami Heat, although I think they're going to win the series for other reasons other than experience. But if you look at the Pacers, I think that the inexperience might be good for them. And I say this because they have the hunger to get to the finals, and they have the youth in Hibbert and Paul George and George Hill to run with the Miami Heat and say, you know what, we have nothing to lose at this point. Nobody is thinking that we're going to win these games. We have no experience. Let's just go out there and shock the world. So on one side, yes, the Heat experience will certainly benefit them. All 3 guys have been through this before. Talking about the big 3 of Bosh, James, and Wade. But on the other hand, the lack of experience could help Indiana's motivation to make some noise in this series.
All right, last couple minutes before we let you go, let's get final predictions of the West. Again, the East, just to make it record, I have the Heat in 5, and Rory Bluestein has the Heat in 7. Going to the West, I think the Spurs go 500 and win this in 6. Give us your prediction of the West Finals.
I'm going to say the Spurs will win in 5. I think Memphis will split on their home court, and then the Spurs will close it out in San Antonio. And not sure when I'll be on next, Rory, but I'm going to go into the NBA Finals, and I'm going to say the Heat will win in 6 over San Antonio.
All right, so we'll keep that prediction posted, and let's give you a quick plug before we let you go. Of course, you are the play-by-play man for women's Drexel basketball, and you have some other things going on. Tell us all about that.
Well, the Drexel women's basketball team actually won the women's postseason NIT. We had a phenomenal run, defeating the Utah Utes out of the Pac-12 in the championship game, and then in the Elite Eight defeated Auburn, and in the Final Four defeated Florida. So the Drexel Dragons doing some good work there and winning the NIT, so congrats out to them. And then, of course, I have my own high school sports network, the Sports Fan Base Network. We are actually covering the Philadelphia Public League Championship baseball game tomorrow at 3:15 p.m. Eastern Time. You can watch it live at www.the, that's in the word the, SFBN, that stands for sportsfanbasenetwork.com.
All right, great stuff. Great to have you on Lewis Live on Israel Sports Radio. Enjoy the basketball, and we will be in touch.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on, Ari.
Absolutely. Be well out there. All right, that was Rory Bluestein, our Philadelphia insider here on Lewis Live on Israel Sports Radio. Great stuff. You heard him break down the matchups, and I just kind of think for the Pacers, it's just a little bit too much. And that's not a disrespect to Roy Hibbert or Coach Vogel or any of the great things they've done this season. If they're in the conference finals, they're a good team. That's obvious. But I just think you're dealing with a dynasty here. And when LeBron James went to Miami, there were a few people that said, no, this is a dynasty. This is a 3-win, championship win team, and they're on the verge of getting title number 2. And LeBron, of course, under contract to play with the Heat next season. So you're talking about those 3 titles being in a row and that being a dynasty. So that is certainly impressive stuff, to say the least. And we're going to stay here and not take a commercial break. We're going to actually bring on a gentleman who can give us some insight on the Heat's dominance. The Heat, in their last 47 games, are 44-3. So that's just some dominant stuff. That's why a lot of teams or a lot of people will not pick the Heat to lose in the conference finals, because if they haven't lost 4 games in about 50 games, I don't know if they're going to lose 4 games in the next round or so. But to give us a little more insight on the Heat's dominance and success this season is their strength and conditioning coach, Bill Foran. Bill, welcome to Lewis Live on Israel Sports Radio.
Thank you. Good to be on.
Now, I have to tell you, you were on last year. We made a deal with you that if the Heat won the championship, we would have you back on to ask about the trip to the White House. I know it was a year later, but I like to keep my word if I can. So tell us, were you able to go back to the White House? And, of course, you were there with the 2006 title team to see President Bush. Were you able to go this time to see President Obama? And if so, please tell us about that experience.
Yes, I was. That was a good memory. Thank you.
Sure.
It was really fun, as always. It never gets old, but it was really nice this year. They had a nice tour of the White House for us that they didn't have before. So we got to see the presidential library and see different rooms in the White House that are pretty famous that we hadn't seen before. So that was very nice, and it's always nice to stand up at that podium with the president.
Now, what's interesting, I'm not trying to get into politics, again, Democrat or Republican, but President Obama is a big basketball fan. So was that a little bit different that you saw this president who likes sports and likes basketball?
You know what? He did do a little meet and greet with us and knew all the players and did talk some basketball. Our assistant coach, Bob McAdoo, we went up to him and talked a little how he remembers Bob when he played. So, yeah, that was pretty cool.
Certainly, no doubt about it. Of course, President Obama also makes those picks for the NCAA tournament and does follow professional basketball. So that was obviously a special treat. Again, even though it was the second time in 6 years, you weren't tired of it, you weren't bored, you'd be happy to go back again?
Let's do it again. I'm ready.
All right, and a lot of people obviously certainly predicting that, picking that. You guys are the defending champions. And before we go more into the success this season, I want to talk about Ray Allen. Ray, one of the new members, new additions to this team, a great career, top 20 all-time NBA scorer. He is known for his phenomenal work ethic and in superb shape. What was it like working with Ray Allen this season and working with him as now a member of the Miami Heat?
He's a true professional. And you can see why he's 37 years old and he's in such great shape. He takes care of himself so well. He eats so well. He trains hard. He prepares every day. It's been fun to be around, to see, this Hall of Famer and what he does on a daily basis to be the best he can be.
Yeah, I mean, Ray Allen was known. I mean, Ray Allen's main game is a spot-up shooter, but a lot of times he has to run through screens, so he always has to be in peak physical condition. Not to say the other NBA players are not, but his position as a shooting guard is so draining, so athletic, and so much cardiovascular. Now, in regards to the Heat, they had the bullseye on them as the defending champions. Their record, I believe, in the last 45 games or 46 games, they've only had 3 losses. The attitude of the team, the feeling of the team, is it extra pressure because of the defending champions, or are they calm and collected and they look as business as usual? They have a job to do and they're going to go out there and get it done and not worry and be concerned with the pressure.
That's what it is. They've been there before. They've tasted it. They want to taste it again, and they're just professional in their preparation. And it's been an amazing year. And now we've got the Indiana Pacers tonight at our place, and we've been off for almost a week now, so they are anxious and ready to get going.
Now, talk about that layoff, because sometimes people look at it as an advantage, especially, I mean, if it's an older team, they say, we like the layoff, want the time off. Other players say, no, we want game action. You can't generate that in a practice. We want to play consistently. So how does your role work when there's a week-long layoff? Do guys come up to you and say, hey, coach, I want to work a little extra after practice. I want to do a little extra running, weightlifting, something to that effect to kind of curb off this layoff. So how does your job and your role be impacted by this layoff?
As far as the weight training goes, yeah, everybody got to do a little more than normal because we had a whole week. So we had the guys in on a regular basis with their weight training. Some guys did extra conditioning, but the practices were hard and crisp. So they kept their conditioning with the good hard practices. The big thing, it's interesting because sometimes rest is good and sometimes you want to keep playing because you're fine-tuned. When we took care of Milwaukee in 4 games and then had to wait a week for Chicago, we came out rusty that first game and they beat us.
Right.
So hopefully we learned from that, and we did a few things a little different this time in preparation for the week in between, and I think they're ready to go.
All right, now another interesting question I want to have regarding your particular job. I'm not sure if you're asked to this or not, but since you're the strength and conditioning coach for the Heat, you obviously have a lot of expertise on the body, physiology, and so on. Do coaches ever come up to you and ask you questions regarding the other team? Something to the effect of, do you think this guy is playing this way, his shot's off, is he tired, or is there some injury? Is there certain expertise that you can give your other coaches on your staff that you see maybe something that they don't see? Are you ever asked to do that and have been asked to do that in the postseason?
No, I have not been asked that specifically. They do ask. They look at some players, and it looks like they're in really good shape. They look like they've developed, gotten stronger, and so they ask me, do I know anything about, what they're doing, type of thing. But as far as your question, no, they haven't come to me with that.
We're speaking with strength and conditioning coach for the Miami Heat, Bill Foran, here on Lewis Live on Israel Sports Radio. We talked about Ray Allen at 37 years old, still being in great shape. He's not the oldest player on the ball club. That award goes to Juwan Howard. I mean, Juwan Howard, I remember him as a kid at Michigan, and the fact that he's still playing is really incredible. Obviously, not the same star role that he had earlier in his career, but nonetheless, you're playing professional basketball, you're playing in the NBA at 40, truly accomplishment. So what has he been doing to keep himself in shape and stay in the league at age 40?
He's similar to Ray, and he's a true professional. He trains consistently in the weight room. He's one of the guys that does extra conditioning. He hasn't been getting any minutes, but he always keeps himself ready. In case that happens, he's ready to go. And what's interesting, I always have with the players, nutrition is a big thing, and you got to have the energy from the nutrition. And if you're eating right, you're going to have more energy. And I have a list of, I call it the dirty 30 of foods that they shouldn't be eating. Okay. And I have them check off how many foods in that category do they eat. And then I have a list of what I call superfoods, very nutritious foods, and they check off and just to compare. And young guys look at this dirty 30 and they say, what am I going to eat? That's what I eat. Well, Juwan checked off 1.
Wow.
And superfoods, he ate every one. So he eats right, he takes care of his body, and he's a true professional.
All right, I have to definitely, Coach, I got to pick your brain on this one because I'm trying to drop a couple of pounds. I'm playing in my synagogue league. I want to, help the team more. Tell us some of the foods of the Dirty 30.
Okay, fried foods, sugary foods, sugary cereals, high-fat foods. Those are the big things. And we get specific with different types, like donuts are on the list, French fries are on the list. And some people love them, and you can eat them in moderation. But if you stay away from them and eat more fruits, vegetables, grains, and high-energy foods, you're going to feel better. When you feel better, you're going to play better.
Right. You're killing me, Coach. Fried chicken's one of my favorite foods out there. Okay, but that's, got to put a little pain, got to have sacrifice, obviously. Now, of the superfoods, so you're talking about grades. Do you tell players eat a big breakfast in the morning or wait till a little later? Timing-wise, when do you like to see your athletes eat the meals?
Okay, for breakfast, we're fortunate. We have a chef right at the arena, so when they come in, we have they come in, they can have their egg white omelets, or they have oatmeal, or they have a bunch of healthy breakfast foods for them to eat. And the chef has the list of Dirty 30, and he has the superfoods. And he doesn't make anything from the Dirty 30, and he makes as much with the superfoods as possible. So they come in normally. If we practice at 10 o'clock, guys, we got some early risers. They'll be in between 8 and 8:30 and eat, and they get ready, and those guys are usually the early guys in the weight room and get into the weight room around 9 o'clock. So somewhere between 8 and 9:30, they have breakfast. We have a good hard practice, and on their way out, there's lunch for them. So we know they're getting those two good meals, and then on their own, they have a good dinner, and I always have a recovery shake for them at their locker after each practice and game, along with their supplements, vitamins, minerals. We really focus on fish oils and vitamin D.
All right, very interesting stuff. I did not realize that. This is great stuff logistically. I did not realize that players on the team would eat together at the facility. Is that common among most NBA teams, or is that something special that the Miami Heat do?
No, a lot of them are doing that now. One, they want to take care of their players because players talk and they think, well, they're doing that at that place, kind of a recruiting tool. Hey, they got a great facility and they have breakfast and they have lunch, so everybody started doing it to keep up with the Joneses. But it's good we know they're having two quality meals right there.
Great point. 67% of the meals right there. And sleep-wise, do you have advice you tell the athletes to get 8 hours of sleep, 6? Obviously, to be honest, professional athletes are going to have a pretty good social lifestyle. Many of them, they might be out partying, especially in the regular season. Do you tell them, hey, if you're going to have your fun, make sure to get at least 6 hours, or do you say 8 hours is a must and your game will go a road and you won't play as well if you're not getting at least 8 hours of sleep?
Ideally 8 hours of sleep. If they stay up late and come in and try to have a hard practice, they can tell. People can see it. If somebody is struggling, they probably you can see why. Now, luckily, this group, we've got a bunch of professionals, and they have a goal in mind, so that isn't a problem with this team. Now, I know some teams, if they're not going to make the playoffs, it's a little tougher to get people to get the athletes to buy into it, but I talk to them about the recovery side of training is so important, and the recovery side is proper nutrition and proper rest. And if you don't have those two things, you're not going to be effective on the court. So we do talk a lot about getting their rest and eating right.
All right, now in the off season, and this season is coming to an end. Hopefully for you guys, you're going to play in June, but in a few weeks it'll be over. Do you guys have the facilities open in the summer, and the players can come in and eat these meals and work out, etc.? Are you guys open in the off season?
We are open in the off season. We don't have the chef there in the off season.
Okay.
So they're in the off season. They're on their own because you don't know who's going to come in. But say last year we won the championship on June 21st. It was a long 9-month season. I want them to get away at least 2 to 4 weeks guys that didn't get much playing time can be back in a couple weeks, but the guys that have got all the minutes, they need to get away for a month.
Right.
Just relax, let their body recover, and then starting in August, they start getting it going again, August and September, and crank it up for fall camp in October.
Now, one of the things I'm always fascinated with athletes in regards to nutrition is when they eat out at a restaurant and then they will get, or a room service, and they get some type of food poisoning. You saw Kobe Bryant happen about 11 years ago in the conference finals against the Kings in Sacramento. There's rumors that the hotel in Sacramento poisoned his food. I don't know if that happened or not. But do you tell your guys, especially if they're going on the road, you can't be eating room service food? Is there some type of catering system to give them food? Because it's a gamble. If they eat something wrong, they're sick, that can lose them a game in the playoffs and affect the series. So what is your advice regarding when they go on the road and play these road games?
Our guys do order room service if they want, but they all have aliases, so they don't know who's getting that food.
Okay.
They don't know if it's an NBA player or if it's just a businessman. So we have not had any problem with that, but maybe that's what takes care of it.
Okay, so there you go. That's the secret to success, have an alias name. Very nice. We're speaking again with strength and conditioning coach for the Miami Heat, Bill Foran. And, you know, this may shock you, but we can't really do an interview about the Miami Heat without talking about number 6, LeBron James. Fascinating season, great season, 4th MVP in 5 years. In my opinion, his best season of his career. He's still obviously got a long way to go. Perhaps the greatest season of all time, according to some experts. You're there, you see him all the time. Has he done something different physically, mentally, something in his mind to go to another gear, another level, and play the best basketball of his life?
You know, I think part of it is he tries to get better every year, doing something in the off season to make him better the next year. And last year, I think Akeem Olajuwon.
Right, worked on his post game.
Yeah, on post game. So he's always working on something. But I think also he's got a championship under his belt. That's taken care of. He just played more free. He just got to be LeBron and just go out there and produce. It was amazing to watch.
No question about it. And again, you know, he, in my opinion, should have got the unanimous MVP. He was one vote short. One vote went to Carmelo Anthony. I mean, in your opinion, did LeBron seem to care about that? Or because a lot of these players will try to find something to motivate them, to get them going. And Michael Jordan used to look through newspapers on different before games and try to find a writer that said something negative about something. So LeBron James, does he put bulletin board material in the locker room to try to pump up himself or his team and try to get the Heat another victory?
You know what? Not really. When they first came together, and there was everybody hated the Heat. It was kind of us against the world mentality, and that kind of helped them get going. But now, after a championship and the way we've been playing, they just want to be the best they can be and try to win more. So I have not seen that from LeBron this year.
And, of course, the Heat take on the Pacers tonight in Game 1 of the East Finals. And before we talk a little bit more about that, I want to go into some of the other players on the squad, because the Heat, you know, any team that wins a championship, any team that gets to the East Finals, it's not just one player as good as LeBron James is. And one of my favorite players in the NBA is on your ball club, and that's Shane Battier. Even though his Duke team beat my Arizona team in 2001, I have forgiven him for that. But he was a fantastic player in college, and some people thought should have been the number 1 pick, and has had a really good career, very solid, and a very smart guy off the court, a Duke college graduate. So what has it been like to work with him? Obviously, Coach K has a strict regiment program at Duke. Has Shane brought some of those principles and aspects of Coach K's philosophy into the Miami Heat?
I believe he has, because he is, like the other two we talked about, Ray and Juwan, he's a true professional. He comes in, he's one of the first ones in the weight room in the morning, doesn't miss a workout. He just does everything right. And that's how these guys, have such long careers. They're true professionals. They keep their body right, and they come in and they prepare well. And he's just a joy to work with. What a great guy. Just such a hardworking guy, fun guy. You're right. He's one of my favorites, too.
Yeah, I just love because he plays the game with a lot of intensity. He kind of does whatever the team needs. If he needs him to guard a number 4, number 2, 3, whatever, he's going to get it done. And again, very much of an intellectual guy, which is something also I appreciate. I want to talk to you about Mike Miller. He played college basketball at Florida, had a good run in the tournament before he came out to the NBA, not playing the Heat. A lot of people thought last season would be his last year. He had some clutch shots in Game 5 against Oklahoma City, and he looked a bit banged up, injured. What was part of the reason, or how was he able to get back and play another season in the NBA?
He had an off season to rest and recover. He was just so beat up by the time we got to the finals, but that last game was amazing. Hit his first 7 threes. It got to be a fun. You usually don't win a world championship going away in the 5th game, but because of him knocking all those threes down, that's what happened. But he got to rest and recover and came back much healthier this year than he was last year. And we're such a deep roster, he hasn't been getting the playing time. And I just look at he's such a good player. He can knock down the 3, but he offensive rebounds. He's a great facilitator, great passer. I'm hoping he gets more minutes. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, again, that is the good and the bad, or if you will, playing on a championship team, is that a lot of these great players don't get a lot of minutes. And I'm sure if Mike was on another ball club in the NBA, good chance he'd be starting to get a lot of minutes. But on this team, he obviously has a bit of a different role. Now, in the East Finals, playing the Pacers, in your guys' eyes, is the feeling that this is the team the Heat want, that this is these are the 2 best teams in the conference? No disrespect to New York, but Indiana has a little of everything. They play very physical, good defensive team. So is this the team that Miami feels like, if you're going to get back to the NBA Finals, you got to beat, to be the best, you got to beat the best, and you got to beat the Pacers to get back to the Finals. So is that kind of the feeling in the locker room at this point?
Yeah, this was the team they expected would be there when we got to the Finals. So, and they are. They're a very good team. They got that big front line, and you never know with their team who's going to step forward. They have, Paul George really stepped forward this year for them, and George Hill at point guard's playing real well. They just got across the board a very good team.
And, of course, the Pacers beat the Heat 2 out of 3 in the regular season. So a lot of people say this is going to be a whitewash. It'll be too easy for the Heat. But I'm sure, as you talk about, the Heat are professionals. They're not going to look past anyone and look to the NBA Finals. They're going to focus on the business at hand, I'm sure, correct?
Yes, we understand Indiana's a very good team, and we're going to have to play our best to beat them. We saw what happened in the regular season. They won. We played up there twice, and they beat us twice, and we played in Miami once, and we won in Miami. So it's going to be a dogfight.
No doubt about it. And again, Game 1 is tonight. Heat and the Indiana Pacers, and Game 2 will be on Friday, so they'll get those 2 games in to catch up with the West Finals, who've already played 2 games. Coach, good luck. Thank you so much. We're gonna try to keep it. I'll try to keep an eye on the Dirty 30. I'll try to do what I can. At least cut out the sweets. I might have to be a bit of a sucker for fried chicken, but I'll try to cut down the sweets.
Yeah, cut back a little, you will feel better.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the most important thing at the end of the day, obviously, is feeling good. Coach, this was really a treat. Thank you so much. We know you're very busy with the East Finals. We really appreciate the time here on Lewis Live on Israel Sports Radio.
Very good. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right, and by the way, if you guys win again, we'll have to have you on again to talk about the trip to the White House.
Let's do it.
All right. Good luck, Coach. We'll speak to you soon. Thank you so much.
Yep. Bye.
All right. Wow. What a great treat. Bill Foran, the Dirty 30, ladies and gentlemen. The Dirty 30. Keep an eye on those foods you eat. It'd be great if the Miami Heat could have on their website the Dirty 30 foods as told by Coach Bill Foran of what you need to stay away from. Yeah, I don't know about the fried chicken thing. I had some fried chicken today. I'm going to have some after the show, and it's a fried food. I don't know about that. But it's true, if I eat a donut or something sugary, certain foods I feel it. Actually, cream cheese is one of those foods I feel right away. Yeah, I know I'm talking about what foods I eat. It's my show. I could do that. But there's certain foods you feel it right away. These guys are professional athletes. They have to be eating well in addition. As talented as they are and physically gifted as they are, if they're not eating correctly, as you talked about, or sleeping as well. As Coach talked about that, if they're not sleeping enough, they will see it in the practice. Coaches will see it, and the other teammates will see it. We're going to take a commercial break, and on the other side, we have on a very special guest, Danielle Goldstein. She's going to compete for the Olympics and represent Israel. So we're very excited to have her on, especially during this training period of her season. So that's on the other side of this break. This is Lewis Live on IsraelSportsRadio.com.
You're tuned in to the only all-sports talk network in the Middle East, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Hey folks, Kagan here. As you know, I'm always staying on top of the fitness world, keeping up with current trends. One form of exercise that's been around for ages and is currently being rediscovered is suspension bodyweight training. So if you're looking for a way to get in shape, improve your health, and train your body to move in new ways, then the X1 by Israel Gym Systems is for you. Find out more on our website at www.israelgym.com or look for our page on Facebook, Israel Gym Systems X1. Israel Gym X1. Higia Hazman.
You're already using a credit card every day. Why not feel good every time you make a purchase? When using the HAS Advantage Support Israel Visa card, a percentage of each purchase you make will be donated to your choice of 24 Israeli-based charities, while still earning a reward point for every dollar spent. But wait, these rewards are even better than the standard rewards you get, especially when using them towards Israel travel, with the best conversion rate on El Al's Matmeed frequent flyer program. Earn double points at some of your favorite supermarkets and restaurants in the U.S., as well as discounts all over Israel. If you love traveling and supporting Israel, HAS Advantage is the card for you. Just give us a call toll-free at 1-866-6-ISRAEL. Sign up right now with the code ISR10 to earn 2,500 bonus points. That's 1-866-647-7235. HAS Advantage. Earn rewards. Support Israel. Offer valid for U.S. citizens only. Terms and conditions do apply. When dialing from within Israel, please dial 1-800-200-818.
Israel Sports Dynamics specializes in football consulting, equipment, uniforms, and more. Great brands such as Nike, Russell Athletics, Schutt Sports Products, and many more. Just one call away. With over 30 years coaching experience with university and professional athletes, Harry Hill, owner of ISD, can advise you for all your sports needs. Call 054-581-3248. That's 054-581-3248, or visit our website at www.isdisrael.com. If that's not easy enough, click on the ISD banner on the Israel Sports Radio website and be part of the game.
Are you tired of paying for expensive gym memberships that you don't use? Are you frustrated by not seeing results? It's time for the X1. Israel Gym Systems is proud to launch the X1 suspension and bodyweight training system. Lose weight, build muscle, improve balance, coordination, and flexibility. With your purchase of the X1, you'll receive a free membership to IsraelGym.com and access to our archives of videos and exercise plans. Sign up today at www.israelgym.com and get ready for the new you. Israel Gym X1. Higia Hazman.
Broadcasting live from Israel.
IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Back here on Lewis Live on Israel Sports Radio. Quick programming notes and announcements before we take another commercial break. Again, the Radio Mike Show, stay tuned, stay on the lookout for that. Bringing some great guests. That is hosted by Michael Rojas. The Yossi G and Daniel Freeman Show regarding the NHL playoffs is going to be up on YouTube in a day or so. Keep an eye for that. And my good friend Joe Robbins will be hosting the show as well. We're going to have a lot of great things in the future here on Lewis Live, on Israel Sports Radio, on Lewis Live as well, but of course for the station in general. We appreciate everybody's support, and we appreciate you listening to our show today. We'll take a commercial break, and on the other side, it's Danielle Goldstein. This is Lewis Live on IsraelSportsRadio.com.
You're tuned in to the only all-sports talk network in the Middle East, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Hey folks, Kagan here. As you know, I'm always staying on top of the fitness world, keeping up with current trends. One form of exercise that's been around for ages and is currently being rediscovered is suspension bodyweight training. So if you're looking for a way to get in shape, improve your health, and train your body to move in new ways, then the X1 by Israel Gym Systems is for you. Find out more on our website at www.israelgym.com or look for our page on Facebook, Israel Gym Systems X1. Israel Gym X1. Higia Hazman.
You're already using a credit card every day. Why not feel good every time you make a purchase? When using the HAS Advantage Support Israel Visa card, a percentage of each purchase you make will be donated to your choice of 24 Israeli-based charities, while still earning a reward point for every dollar spent. But wait, these rewards are even better than the standard rewards you get, especially when using them towards Israel travel, with the best conversion rate on El Al's Matmeed frequent flyer program. Earn double points at some of your favorite supermarkets and restaurants in the U.S., as well as discounts all over Israel. If you love traveling and supporting Israel, HAS Advantage is the card for you. Just give us a call toll-free at 1-866-6-ISRAEL. Sign up right now with the code ISR10 to earn 2,500 bonus points. That's 1-866-647-7235. HAS Advantage. Earn rewards. Support Israel. Offer valid for U.S. citizens only. Terms and conditions do apply. When dialing from within Israel, please dial 1-800-200-818.
Israel Sports Dynamics specializes in football consulting, equipment, uniforms, and more. Great brands such as Nike, Russell Athletics, Schutt Sports Products, and many more. Just one call away. With over 30 years coaching experience with university and professional athletes, Terry Hill, owner of ISD, can advise you for all your sports needs. Call 054-581-3248. That's 054-581-3248, or visit our website at www.isdisrael.com. If that's not easy enough, click on the ISD banner on the Israel Sports Radio website and be part of the game.
Are you tired of paying for expensive gym memberships that you don't use? Are you frustrated by not seeing results? It's time for the X1. Israel Gym Systems is proud to launch the X1 suspension and bodyweight training system. Lose weight, build muscle, improve balance, coordination, and flexibility. With your purchase of the X1, you'll receive a free membership to IsraelGym.com and access to our archives of videos and exercise plans. Sign up today at www.IsraelGym.com and get ready for the new you. Israel Gym X1. Higia Hazman.
Broadcasting live from Israel.
IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Back here on Lewis Live on Israel Sports Radio for our final segment. We've had a great show up until this point, and we're going to continue here until 10:30 local time. If you're listening to us right now and missed the first 2 hours of the program, not to be afraid, not to worry. We will have the podcast up on our YouTube page hopefully within 24 hours, so you can listen to Rory Sinner's interview, Coach Bill Foran's interview, Ari Bluestein's interview, and, of course, Alan Jaegar. So we hope to get that up very, very soon, and we thank you for tuning into us right now here in the 10 o'clock hour. Exciting stuff ahead. Of course, Ari was able to break down the West and East finals, and we have the Miami Heat both winning. Both of us predict the Heat to win. Ari has the Heat winning in 7. I have the Heat winning in 5. We're going to switch gears right now and talk a little Grand Prix show here with Danielle Goldstein, who's on Lewis Live and Israel Sports Radio. Danielle, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So much to talk about. Very exciting stuff. We appreciate your time. You were just in Israel because you met with the Israeli Olympic team. So tell us about that meeting. What were some of the goals? Obviously, you want to compete for the 2016 Olympic Games. Tell us what occurred in that meeting with the Israeli Olympic Committee.
So I met with them. The team we're in the process of actually putting the team together, which is the reason that I was in Israel. And so far we don't actually have the team. We haven't competed with all of us there. However, the meeting was to sort of, meet the Olympic Committee and talk to them and see, what the procedure is going to be and to make sure everybody's on board and on the same page. And it was a great meeting, and I think we're moving forward, and I think it's going to be a really bright future.
All right, now one of the things that happens a lot with Olympic athletes, one of the hurdles that the athletes have to go through is funding. Obviously, you need funding to train properly, to practice. If you're working a full-time job, it makes it difficult. There are athletes who do that, but it's not so simple. What, funding-wise, tell us about that situation regarding the team.
So at the moment, we're sort of gathering funds from a number of different people, from individuals and corporations, and, we're sort of putting it all together. From all over the world, we're sort of reaching out to Jewish communities all over the place, not just, in Israel, and we're sort of in the process of putting it all together, but it's definitely going to happen.
All right, it is interesting, Grand Prix being an Olympic event. Now, tell us about the Olympic history of Grand Prix show jumping.
So show jumping has been in the Olympics for, it's one of the earliest sports, actually, because of the Olympics used to be sort of a more barbaric thing, right. And, so horses were involved for a really long time. So show jumping has had a long history in the Olympics, and there are other disciplines now. There's actually 3 major disciplines in the Olympics with horses, and, show jumping is primarily just about jumping over obstacles in a set course within a confined arena, and that's what show jumping is, and it's been in the Olympics for a long time.
And, of course, I'm sure you get this question all the time, but I have to ask the question, what made you go into this sport? I mean, this is not a sport like basketball or baseball. It's kind of an out-of-the-box type of sport. So tell us the origins and your story of how you got into the sport.
Well, I got into it when I was a kid. It's one of those things that, I sort of went for a riding lesson, and it sort of turned into a giant passion of mine. So, I've been riding for, 20 years now, and sort of see no end in sight. I love it, and I hope to do it for a really long time.
Are you ever, it's kind of like any athlete, any sport, they kind of have to put this out of their mind, but they still have to understand the potential injury. Are you ever scared about getting hurt, or is this you got to not even think about it because you're more likely to cause damage if you think about, God forbid, getting injured?
You know what? It's the same thing as any other sport. You got to put it out of your mind. But what's amazing about horse sport is that it's 2 athletes. It's not just one. So you're thinking, there's potential injury to yourself. There's potential injury to the horses. If anything, actually, we worry much more about the horses because their safety is the most important thing. Because, they're our equipment. They're the ones who, take us around the course, and we rely on them heavily. So, the safety of both of us is really important. But really, in the end, you kind of got to keep it out of your mind and just focus on what you need to do.
All right, and talk a bit about your particular story. You made Aliyah in 2011. Was part of the Aliyah so you can represent Israel, or were there other outside reasons for your decision?
Well, it was a little bit twofold. One, I think the major reason was because I always wanted to represent Israel in international competition. But 2, I had a long history sort of with family and friends in Israel, and I had my bat mitzvah there when I was 12. And I sort of always had a love for the country, and, I just a feeling of wanting to be part of that group, and represent them as much as I could. And I sort of felt as though I had a way of helping out and helping Israel and by competing internationally. So, when I made Aliyah, it was for multiple reasons, but primarily because, I wanted to ride for Israel.
All right, and talk about some of the support that you received. I don't mean financially, meaning people, other Israelis or people in Knesset government, media, et cetera, something to the fact you're getting phone calls saying, we like what you're doing. It's great to get Israel on this type of stage. Excellent hasbara to have this type of sport, have Israel do well in this type of sport. So have you gotten any of those type of phone calls and comments?
I've definitely gotten plenty of comments. I don't know if there's been a specific phone call quite yet, but maybe one day I'll get something like that. But there's been an enormous amount of support. I think originally when I made Aliyah, people were like, wait, who are you? What are you doing? Why are you doing this? And now, that I've been to Israel a few times recently, and the team is really gearing up, there's been an enormous amount of support, not only from members of Knesset, but also from the Israeli Equestrian Federation and the equestrian community in Israel, and also Jewish communities in New York and in Florida and other places where I compete. There's a lot of momentum building, and the support's been amazing, and I think people are really excited about it.
Now, while you were in Israel on this last trip, in addition to meeting with the Israeli Olympic Committee, you gave a clinic on equestrian health. Tell us a bit about that. You did that at the Intratherapeutic Riding Center. Tell us a bit about that clinic.
So the clinic was Intra, which is a therapeutic riding center in Neirin Village. And it was to sort of teach, there's a lot of kids there, and even some of the instructors as well. It was covering all different aspects of horse management and how to properly take care of them, from grooming them and brushing them and making sure they're clean, to putting the tack on. And then I did a riding demonstration. And, we talked a lot about safety and, how to properly treat the horses, that, they're not just they're not just equipment, but they're actual animals, and you have to treat them with respect. And, I went through how you warm them up, and then how you actually work them properly, and then how you cool them down, and taught a lot about health and proper management and feeding regimens and things like that. It was a great clinic.
All right, and one of the interesting goals that you have, you want to build an equestrian center to train riders here in Israel. So tell us a bit about that. What inspired you to do this type of goal, and how do you see that formulating and occurring?
Well, the first thing is that not only do I want to personally represent Israel on the international scene of riding, but I feel as though building the sport in Israel is really important. So I think one of the main things to get that done is to build an equestrian center where we can actually train horses and train young kids as they're sort of building in the sport, so that, we have sort of a pipeline for the team. I don't want it to just be sort of this one-time team and that's it. The idea is to build the sport and build the popularity of it so that this is something that people want to do, and, that we can use that facility that I would like to build one day to sort of train all of these people, and we can bring horses in, and, we'll be able to train the horses, and it'll be sort of a team training ground.
And, you talk about it being a team training ground. I mean, what do you think is the education level in Israel regarding equestrian, and where do you see it right now? Where would you like to see it? And how quickly do you think that jump in education will occur?
Well, I think at the moment, the horse sport is building in Israel for sure. I just attended the national championships this past weekend, and, people certainly know what they're doing. So, there's definitely a relatively high level of understanding and education going on already in Israel. And the idea is to sort of just bring in a little bit more of that international flair so that, the top level of the sport is extremely competitive and extremely involved. So the idea would be to, sort of increase that part of the education, because the basics are there. We just want to sort of get everyone involved with the sort of the bigger picture as far as the Olympics and World Games, and, that part of the education is really important. And I think as far as the timeline, I think that this is all possible in the next 3 to 5 years. That's what we're hoping for.
All right, so you talk about 3 to 5 years. That's a pretty lofty goal. What are some other things that maybe have to occur outside? I mean, does the entire industry or the entire world really have to go to another notch in Israel for that to occur, to get that jump in education in 3 to 5 years?
Well, I don't know if necessarily the rest of the world needs to. I think really it's important to bring in, some people to Israel to be able to teach this kind of thing. We need to bring in top professionals who are competing or either competing or training, and bring them over to Israel and do clinics and sort of get everybody involved. And yes, it is a lofty goal to do it in the next 3 to 5 years, but I think as the team builds and we can get some awareness as far as the team competing internationally, I think it'll help bring awareness into Israel, and that'll help the education level jump relatively quickly.
So, this all very interesting stuff. Do you ever have days where you kind of think it's not really going to get where you want to, struggles? Talk about some of the struggles that you have to overcome to try to continue and make this a success here in Israel.
Well, for sure, I've had those days. I can't touch you those days. I had some recently, but you know what? For me, this is such an unbelievable passion, and it's something, it's not only my career, but it's something that I've wanted for a very long time. And I really do, being in Israel the past 2 weeks or whatever, it really, in the beginning, I was like, I don't know if we can do it. There's so many steps. But in the end, I got such positive response from the Olympic Committee, from the Federation, from some individuals who are willing to support it, that, as many sort of roadblocks as there have been, and I'm sure there will be more, it for sure seems like it's going to happen, and I'm still very positive about it because, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get it done.
All right. Now, you talked about also, you met with the committee to try to form a team. Well, that was one of the questions talked about in the interview, forming a team to do well. How do you guys go about actually forming a team to compete in the Israel Olympics, or the Olympics for Israel?
Okay, so the first step really involves creating what is known in the sport as a Nations Cup team, which means that we need at least 3 riders, hopefully 4, and then we can have a 5th as an alternate, and compete in Nations Cup competitions, which means that we would go as a team all over the world and compete against other countries in a team format type of competition. So that would be the first that we sort of have, you know, the original team, and we put it together, which we are right at the verge of having for the next, we're going to try and do a Nations Cup in about 6 weeks or so. So, you know, we have riders that are riding for Israel that are based here in Europe and even a couple in the U.S., and we're going to put it all together, and we'll start with that. And then once we sort of have that initial team, we build upon it, and we try and increase our horsepower, which means we try and get some better horses. And then we train together, and we increase the level of riding of the riders actually on the team already. And, you know, we just keep building, and that's sort of how we're hoping to get to the Olympics and the World Games.
All right, and, you know, the experience, you talked about riding for over 20 years. Is that generally the level of expertise of a career to participate in the Olympics? What are general the ages of the riders, and how long have they raced for?
Yeah, you know, the Olympics is maybe a horse sport in the Olympics is an amazing thing, because in London, we actually had the oldest athlete in all of the sports across the board was an equestrian, and he was like 71. So wow. This is a sport that you can do it was amazing. So this is a sport that you can do for a very long time. And actually, the older you are, unlike sports like, gymnastics, where you sort of peak when you're a teenager, this is the kind of thing where experience really comes into play. So, you know, we had in the Olympics this year, one of the youngest competitors was 18, and like I said, the oldest was 71. So the age range is enormous. But really, on average, you know, it goes anywhere from 30 to 50 as far as the main sort of range of riders in the Olympics and the top of the sport.
All right, and this is something I ask for a lot of athletes, so I'll ask you the same question. I mean, tell us about your practice schedule, your workout schedule, if you will, training. How often a day does it occur? What types of things are you doing to practice? Because, you know, competing for the Olympics, even though this would be 3 years off, this is something you're doing for 3-4 years for one event. So tell us about the training schedule in your life.
So the training schedule sort of starts early in the morning, and we have a number, you know, most riders have a number of different horses that they're riding all the time. So mine usually starts somewhere around 7 o'clock in the morning, and I ride each one of the horses for at least 45 minutes to an hour, and that takes, you know, a good portion of the day. Usually I have lunch, go home, take a brief nap, get up and work out, either do yoga or running or lift weights. You know, I sort of mix it up all the time. I do any kind of number of different sports. There's cross training, and then usually maybe even take another brief nap and get up and have dinner and go to bed and do it all over again. But what's amazing, like I was saying, you know, the horses are also athletes, so their training schedule is even more intense because they're getting exercise 3-4 times a day on different machines. We have exercise machines for the horses, and then we're riding them. You know, there's so much training involved that goes with them and with the rider.
Now, the horses, of course, like you mentioned, you know, this is kind of a two-variable sport, obviously. The horses themselves, the age of the horses, what are generally the ages of some of the horses that compete in the Olympics, the health of the horses, what are they doing, you know, what are they eating, drinking, and so on to ensure that they're going to be healthy and ready to go for the Olympics?
Okay, so as far as age range, the horse has to be at least 9 years old to be able to compete in the Olympics. At some of the other international competitions, you are allowed to compete with a 7-year-old and a 7 and up. However, you know, at the Olympics, they force the horse to be at least 9, which is unlike sort of horse racing, you know, where they're 2- and 3-year-olds. So the training it takes to get them up to that level for the Olympics is years. And, you know, the horses sort of start at that top level when they're 9. Most in the Olympics are anywhere from, on average, probably 11 to 15. And, you know, they're on very strict diets and, you know, high protein diets. And we monitor them daily depending on the weather and how much exercise they're getting, and they eat multiple times a day. They're treated just like you would a human athlete. You know, you have to watch what they're eating, and you have to do as much exercise as you can, and then back off, you know, if you think that they're getting a little bit weak. You know, it's the same kind of way that you would treat a person. If you look at the horse like an athlete and you treat them like that, then you'll be pretty safe that the horse is going to do well and perform the way you want them to.
All right, and also question in regard to, because a lot of athletes who are professional athletes, when they started younger, there was some other athlete they looked up to, try to emulate, try to be like them. Who was that for you? Were there other riders that you looked at and said, I like this person, this is who I'd like to be like, I like their style, those type of things?
Yeah, there were definitely a couple riders when I was a kid. One of them, his name was Michael Mack. He actually no longer competes internationally, but he was someone that I really looked up to, and he was an American rider and rode in multiple Olympics. He was the way that he rode, what we call something, he was very soft with his hands, meaning that like his connection with the horse was very supple and soft, and it looked like a very fluid motion. It's something I've always tried to emulate. So he was a big one that I always looked up to.
And, you know, it's interesting because regarding horses in themselves, you know, there was an ESPN Sports Century list of top 100 athletes all the time. Man o' War was on there, Secretariat, different type of horses. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, do you consider a horse actually to be an athlete just like, you know, a basketball, baseball player, football player, and those type of athletes?
Oh, absolutely. We have a thing in the sport where, you know, we say it's anywhere between 70 and 80% the horse. So, you know, as much as we're the pilot and we obviously need to get them around the course, the horse is the true, you know, star when it comes to the horse sport. And for sure, we look at horses as athletes, and they're the ones that get idolized in the sport. I mean, of course, they're the famous riders, but over the years, the horses are the ones that really remain sort of famous in everyone's mind. So definitely, I look at them like athletes.
All right. Well, Danielle, great stuff. Thank you for being on Lewis Live at Israel Sports Radio. Good luck to you. We hope to see you bring a gold for Israel in the Grand Prix. And, again, great story. Thank you so much for your time, and we will be in touch.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Bye-bye.
Be well there. All right, Danielle Goldstein here on Lewis Live on Israel Sports Radio, looking to bring a gold home for Israel in the 2014 Olympic Games. We're going to take a commercial break, and we'll be back on the other side to wrap things up. This is Lewis Live on IsraelSportsRadio.com.
You're tuned in to the only all-sports talk network in the Middle East, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Hey folks, Kagan here. As you know, I'm always staying on top of the fitness world, keeping up with current trends. One form of exercise that's been around for ages and is currently being rediscovered is suspension bodyweight training. So if you're looking for a way to get in shape, improve your health, and train your body to move in new ways, then the X1 by Israel Gym Systems is for you. Find out more on our website at www.israelgym.com or look for our page on Facebook. Israel Gym Systems X1. Israel Gym X1. Higia Hazman.
You're already using a credit card every day. Why not feel good every time you make a purchase? When using the HAS Advantage Support Israel Visa card, a percentage of each purchase you make will be donated to your choice of 24 Israeli-based charities, while still earning a reward point for every dollar spent. But wait, these rewards are even better than the standard rewards you get, especially when using them towards Israel travel, with the best conversion rate on El Al's Matmeed frequent flyer program. Earn double points at some of your favorite supermarkets and restaurants in the U.S., as well as discounts all over Israel. If you love traveling and supporting Israel, HAS Advantage is the card for you. Just give us a call toll-free at 1-866-6-ISRAEL. Sign up right now with the code ISR10 to earn 2,500 bonus points. That's 1-866-647-7235. HAS Advantage. Earn rewards. Support Israel. Offer valid for U.S. citizens only. Terms and conditions do apply. When dialing from within Israel, please dial 1-800-200-818.
Israel Sports Dynamics specializes in football consulting, equipment, uniforms, and more. Great brands such as Nike, Russell Athletics, Schutt Sports Products, and many more. Just one call away. With over 30 years coaching experience with university and professional athletes, Terry Hill, owner of ISD, can advise you for all your sports needs. Call 054-581-3248. That's 054-581-3248, or visit our website at www.isdisrael.com. If that's not easy enough, click on the ISD banner on the Israel Sports Radio website and be part of the game.
Are you tired of paying for expensive gym memberships that you don't use? Are you frustrated by not seeing results? It's time for the X1. Israel Gym Systems is proud to launch the X1 suspension and bodyweight training system. Lose weight, build muscle, improve balance, coordination, and flexibility. With your purchase of the X1, you'll receive a free membership to IsraelGym.com and access to our archives of videos and exercise plans. Sign up today at www.israelgym.com and get ready for the new you. Israel Gym X1. Higia Hazman.
Broadcasting live from Israel.
IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Back here in Lewis Live on Israel Sports Radio to kind of wrap the show up here. Again, just to clarify predictions for the West and the East final. I have the Miami Heat winning in 5, and I have the Spurs. Of course, there's already been 2 games in, but I have the Spurs winning in 6. And to give my thoughts on an interesting story, what would be an NBA offseason without talking about Dwight Howard? Different rumors of where Dwight's going to go. Apparently, Dwight came out recently and said he does not like Coach D'Antoni. And I know Coach D'Antoni from his days in Phoenix. And, yeah, I mean, D'Antoni's father criticized him. Of course, if the father's criticized him, probably Dwight had some words as well. But I know D'Antoni from Phoenix. D'Antoni's not a championship caliber coach, doesn't really preach defense. I don't think he really knows how to use a big man. D'Antoni's offense in Phoenix was 7 seconds or less. They would run up the court to try to tire out the team, outscore them, had Steve Nash. That works with that system of Raja Bell and Sean Marion and these guys to run up and down. And Dwight Howard, as fast as he is, he's a big-time post player and a big-time defensive player. This guy has won multiple Defensive Player of the Year awards, and I don't think that he is going to stay in L.A. at the end of the day, and that could be a big reason for that. Again, Dwight Howard Sr. was interviewed in Atlanta Journal-Constitution, saying that Kobe Bryant was wrong to pressure Dwight Howard Jr. to play for shoulder injury, and also criticized D'Antoni for not intervening. Here is the quote. I told him before he said it publicly, it's your career. No person can say what you need to do or not to do. You can't worry about what Kobe or anybody else says, the elder Howard said. Nobody can say what Kobe said. That's stepping into another man's shoes. I understand what Kobe was trying to do, but he went about it the wrong way. He's trying to win a championship, but Dwight has to tell Kobe, I appreciate your opinion, but that doesn't matter. We're 2 men on this team. We need to be reasonable about this. And he thought that Dwight Sr. thought that Bryant was trying to motivate Dwight Jr., but the advice was misplaced, adding, the problem is the coach. D'Antoni needs to step in and say, you guys have got to be quiet. We're trying to secure something here. Dwight is probably looking at the coach thinking, what are you going to do? I promised that had been Stan Van Gundy. That wouldn't have happened. Howard would have been admonished publicly. I think the coach has a lot to do with who controls Kobe's mouth right now. I disagree with that 100% because you saw Kobe Bryant tweeting during playoff games while the game was going on. Coach D'Antoni didn't like that. If Phil Jackson really couldn't control Kobe Bryant, I don't know how Mike D'Antoni could. Now, Howard recently, recently where he's going to go at the end of the day, who knows? But it is something very interesting about how the Lakers can lose a big man. What's Kobe Bryant's situation going to be regarding his injury at going to be 35 years old this summer? Is it going to be the same Kobe Bryant that we've seen in the past? I mean, these things are kind of hard to tell, and this is the marquee franchise in the NBA. No disrespect to the Celtics. Celtics have more titles, but the Lakers have been more appearances in the NBA Finals, and I think that they're really the team that everybody focuses on, in my opinion. So that's just my 2 cents on the whole situation with Dwight Howard. Of course, it is a Dwight Howard drama if he is going to return to L.A. or not. Lakers made the trade for him, gave a Bynum, but Bynum's so injury prone, I don't think that was much of a risk, and I think that was just something that they had to do to get it done. And also, quick other NBA story. Michael Jordan has announced the Bobcats are changing their name to the Hornets. Of course, the Hornets used to play in Charlotte, and then they moved, and when they got a new team, they called the Bobcats. So that's kind of where they are at this point. They want to bring the buzz back to Charlotte. So that's what it's going to be. It's just funny, all these teams move around and then change names. So that's that's what's going to be. It's kind of sad that that's like the biggest news going on in Charlotte basketball because the team is just that bad. That's actually news-making. Anyways, that's going to conclude our show for tonight. We had a great show. I want to thank everybody for listening. Also want to thank our great guests. We started the show at 8 p.m. local time with Alan Jaegar, CEO and founder of Jaegar Sports, talking about breathing and the mental aspects and components of Major League Baseball. He's worked with several Major League teams, such as the Texas Rangers and the San Diego Padres, and talked about throwing to help the ball players. We then had on former UFC cage fighter Rory to talk about some of his fighters, what it's like to fight with an injury, if you're able to continue, get a breakdown of John Jones' impressive win over Chael Sonnen when he had a broken toe, and the preview of John Jones versus Anderson Silva. Then at 9 p.m., we had on Rory Bluestein to break down the West and the East finals, as well as the semifinals. Should have Derrick Rose played against the Heat? Most people say no. Ari is with that opinion. And the Warriors are going to be a team to come, led by Coach Mark Jackson in the future years. We then had on the Miami Heat strength and conditioning coach Bill Foran to talk about what the players eat and what they're not supposed to eat. That would be the dirty 30. Dirty 30, dirty 30. Don't eat that. Who am I kidding? I'm having fried chicken after the show. But you probably shouldn't have it. And then we finished off with Grand Prix show jumper Danielle Goldstein, who said horses are athletes after all. Stay tuned throughout the rest of this month and months to come for great programming on Israel Sports Radio. Check out our YouTube page. Our Twitter handle is Israel Sports RAD. You can find us on Facebook all over the place. And, of course, the website, IsraelSportsRadio.com. So stay tuned throughout the next coming weeks for a lot of great, great stuff. But that's it for tonight. God bless and good night.